All righty, and stand by. We'll go live in 40.
Good morning, everyone. We are live.
By the way, we need an investigation, a CMR investigation into why Starbucks, now that has 2 stores in Cayman, does not open until 9 a.m.
They clearly don't want your business.
Clearly.
That's the only thing I could possibly guess. That makes no sense. Absolutely no sense at all.
Big news. I have some important news for you. Interesting news.
It's Blake and Aaron's Spilling the Tea with Sandy.
Cayman's top news headlines of the day from CMR.
Busy morning.
Good morning, Blake. Good morning, virtual Aaron.
Yeah, exactly. You got a lot of headlines this morning. Let's get to it.
All right. So lots of things. I don't even know where to begin, but let's begin with
this home invasion that happened.
Yes.
What is happening with that? What's that story about?
Home invasion / armed robbery.
Mm-hmm.
2 robbers, a crowbar, and a gun used to get into the home of unsuspected, residents. Still at large, car not yet located. So within minutes of the incident happened, we got word that it went down in South Sound off of Ann. It's called Ann Bonnie Crescent.
Wow, South Sound resident.
Yes. Yeah.
And were they injured? Are they okay?
They're okay.
They were home.
Yes, they were home. And the burglars, very interestingly enough, took the entire safe, from what I'm hearing, which contained an unspecified amount of cash, jewelry, and documents such as passports.
That's crazy.
So not a good situation.
And they took the car.
Well, I think, no, they had their own transportation. They were driving a black BMW that had some front end damage. So we suspect that the police actually haven't officially said anything about this. So this is a bit of a CMR and 1061 exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Because the police have made no comment at all. They've not issued any press comments. But we know that the helicopter was up in the Prospect area shortly after the incident. So we're speculating that was looking for potential suspects. But,
wow.
My contacts say that they were driving a black BMW and it had some front end damage. But yes, no suspects have been apprehended yet.
Does it seem like just a random selection of a house, or it seems a little for you to say that they took the entire safe? How would they know there was a safe, unless
so obviously everyone has been talking about this on social media, and every amateur detective, every Facebook and Instagram detective is saying that look at who worked at your house most recently, because it's probably someone who has a little bit of inside knowledge on the lay of the land.
Yeah, do you recently have a new closet installation? Maybe.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Wow.
So there's that report. Yes. There's also a man who was sentenced last week, but we just got around to putting the story up, for overstaying for 15 years. Blake, 15 years.
How does that happen?
I don't know. I honestly have no idea, but it certainly begs a lot of questions.
Who is this person?
His name is Roy Jackson. He's a Jamaican national.
Okay.
And basically his work permit expired and he just never got it renewed and never worried about it, never found a new employer, and continued to work here in the Cayman Islands. I guess no one ever ran a report to say what work permits have expired. The person hasn't left.
Well, wait, when you're an employer, you need a copy of their current work permit.
Yeah.
So I don't know what kind of work he was doing. Maybe he's just doing like construction. Okay. Yeah. Well, you listen, Roy. You had a good run on the lamb, and eventually you will get caught. So, and he'll probably won't be invited back now that he's overstayed his welcome.
Yeah, I think that this might be a record for overstaying. I kind of feel like it is.
Do you get jail time for that, or do they just deport you?
No, they sent him to jail for 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
They were the magistrate, Philippa McFarland, actually said that she wanted to send a very clear message to anyone who thinks that overstaying is okay, that they're not going to just deport you, because then what message does that send?
That is true.
Yeah, you're probably ready to go home in any event. So no, they will send you to jail. And I thought about it for a minute, and I said, poor Roy. He didn't even get a vacation in 15 years to go back home, because he's probably afraid of.
Well, he's got one now. He's got a 6-month vacation.
So, yeah.
Yesterday,
the governor's office.
Yeah, I was going to say the governor and deputy governor released a statement yesterday regarding your story.
Yeah, well, it wasn't my story, so I want to give credit where credit is due. It was actually a CNS original story. And then we picked up the Auditor General's report from them, which was leaked to them. It wasn't leaked to us this time. So anyway, the governor and the Auditor General, the governor, my apologies. And the
Wendy's coming for you.
I know. She got one story on me. So they're not particularly happy about the fact that this document has been leaked prior to any sort of official release. It's a very interesting document. I must tell you, I was up into the wee hours of the morning reading it. And so on the program today, we're going to talk quite a bit about it, because there's some real repercussions here. I'll tell you what. But anyway, the governor has announced that he is launching an investigation into who leaked the document to CNS. Good luck with that.
And did you find anything interesting in your late night reading last night?
My gosh, the entire thing was interesting. It was the best bedtime story that I have read in a really long time, in fact. So,
really?
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
So you'll be revealing some of that, I'm guessing, today on your show.
I'm going to be trying to break it down, because, sometimes these things get a little bit complex, the legalities and whatever. And it is 19 pages worth of bedtime reading. And to be fair, I only made it to page 10 before my eyes were like, give me a break here. No, page 11, my apologies. So,
and how many
we'll
pages?
Go through some of the findings.
How many pages is it?
It's 19 pages.
Okay.
Yeah.
Almost there.
Yeah.
Almost there.
Now, you're not going to believe this, Blake, but another cruise ship is on the run to the Bahamas.
What?
Yes. So this is the second cruise ship that has decided to avert to the Bahamas, trying to avoid a U.S. judge's order to seize it because of the company's, debt. So this one is Crystal Serenity, operated again by Crystal Cruises, arrived in Bimini Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the passengers, a little 75-year-old man from Las Vegas, said that, he was trying to get back to California. So he's stuck on this cruise ship with several other passengers, but they were taken from the Bahamas to Fort Lauderdale on Monday evening. So he just said he was happy to be off the ship.
Listen, why would you, after the first story came out, even book on a company called Crystal Cruises? I mean,
Crystal Serenity. Obviously, it's not going to be very serene.
Whatever it is. First of all, cruises in general right now, bad idea. Certainly ones that have their ships on the run, on the lam, because they haven't paid their bills. I mean, unless you're getting a really good fare, you're like, hey, I'm going to roll the dice. I got a 10-night Caribbean cruise for $200, $199. I'm going.
So to be fair to them, it did depart on January the 17th. So I think there's a little bit of a lapping over of when they went out to sea. But what happened was the passengers were informed several days later that the ship had to cancel all port of calls at the last minute, and that the company was then suspending operations until late April. So of course, these two ships are out there sailing around. There was first the Crystal Symphony, which is a situation. And then of course now we've got the Crystal Serenity. So
why not just complete the cruise though? You already have people's money, because now you're gonna have to refund it, face lawsuits, etc. Like if you got a cruise ship out there, why not just complete the cruise and then call it quits? That doesn't make any sense.
I'm not really sure why they don't go into other ports. Like maybe there's some kind of legal reason why they wouldn't want to do that. And I don't know why they head to the Bahamas either. Like I'm thinking that's a little bit peculiar. There's something special about the Bahamas that doesn't allow them to like be seized if they're in the Bahamas. Like it's very bizarre. Like I would love to know the legalities of their decision, but we don't have that information yet.
Well, interesting stuff this morning. I'm sure you will have a very interesting show as well, talking about this report. Yeah. So catch that on CMR right now on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. Thanks,
you. Thanks, Andy. All right.
Our
segment with CMR brought to you exclusively on Blake and Aaron by Doctors.
All right, folks. So there you have it. We got a lot more to talk about, though. There is quite a bit that is happening this morning. So good morning to Marshall. Good morning, Catherine. I've got oatmeal because this is going to be a very brain intense session today. So I thought you got to get breakfast because breakfast fuels the brain. So I got my trusty oatmeal and water, ice water, sitting here ready. Let me take a sip of my water. Good morning, Catherine. Good morning, Jackie. Good morning, Larry. Yes, it is Wednesday, hump day. The first Wednesday in February. Paulette is here. Chantel's got it locked. Janetta is here. Irvelyn got it locked in. Diamond Princess. Larry's making some requests for music. Wee Wee is here. BK Santiago says at this time it's 3:30 in Kenya. Oh, hello. All the way from Kenya joining us on the show. What a thing. Thank you for tuning in. Olivia, good morning. Good morning to Junior. Virtuous says, blessed. Good morning, everyone. Sandy, these things been going on in Cayman for a long time. They come to your home to work and seek out what you have. Oh, yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Larry tells us that it is 33 degrees. Going up to 40 and light rain here in New York. At what point does it snow, Larry? What does the temperature have to be in order for you to get snow in New York? Debbie is here. Thank you, Deb. We've got the beautiful Leslie. Leslie, I saw your picture on Facebook yesterday. Have you been working on growing your hair out or something? I wasn't sure what the selfie was about, but you looked good regardless. I can tell you're doing the natural hair journey like myself, Joe. But you just keep yours braided. I don't even do that. I just wash and blow dry most of the time. Leslie says, what a mess. Glad I don't like floating Petri dishes. Yes, I don't know what the end game is with that company. I wish somebody could tell us a bit more. Because it's like weird that they all head to the Bahamas, and then what do they do from the Bahamas? Are they going to just dock in the Bahamas? Does the Bahamas not have a repatriation agreement or something with the U.S.? You know, sometimes that happens. That's why people will run to certain jurisdiction. Yes, Virtuous, we'll be crime fighting a little bit later on in the program. I want us to get an early start in the Auditor General's report because it is quite interesting. And it's going to take a minute to break it down a little bit. Morning, Tracy. Good morning to Miss Sue. Richard's got it locked in. He says, good morning from the hood. Yes. Good morning, Sir Robert. Marshall says, I think that the Bahamas is closer to the U.S. in order for the passengers to make it back home. Just my thoughts. Oh, yes, that could be. Yes, it's much easier to get a ferry for sure. The Bahamas is very close. But then where do they go from there? Do they just stay in the Bahamas? I don't know. Good morning, Emma. How are you? Olivia is here. Let's talk about this report. It's local. Trust me, you guys are not going to believe it. Okay. Okay, we need to remove this. Yes, you guys know I work with some people who are in different time zones, so sometimes they're just up in their prime of their day messaging me now, and I'm just like, hold on a second. Okie dokie. All right. So let's talk about this. So what we have here, folks, is thank you for clarifying, Leslie. Oh, okay. Okay, got it. No, Miss Joy, this is actually a Bahamas, a UK at Hong Kong company that's registered under the Hong Kong ship. So they're not in the Bahamas at all. So that's why I was a little bit curious. All right, so let's talk about this hot mess of a situation. They're a Hong Kong based ship. Yeah, Hong Kong company. So first of all, this report was leaked to Cayman News Service. And we've invited Wendy on the program. I'm not sure if she's coming on yet. Maybe she's not even awake yet, but I'm going to try to message her. So we did invite her. She said she could potentially make it around 9 o'clock. She had some stuff to do early this morning. And I just wanted to get her thoughts on this report. But you know what? It's you know, it is what it is. So here's what we know. I'm going to go through the report, and I'm going to do my best, folks, to explain the contents therein in as simple language as possible, because, you know, sometimes these things can get a little bit complicated. So the name of this report it's from the Office of the Auditor General, and it's the Dubai World Expo and the Cayman Islands Overseas Offices Examination of Potential Breaches of Legislation. Boom. There it is. Everybody can see it? That's the report. 19 pages long. I made my fake. Did y'all just see that when I switch how it does that weird thing? But you know what? It saves me from the problem makeup in the morning, so I'm good with it. So yeah, so it's 19 pages long. It's got a little index and everything. So we're going to be going through it. And well, the conclusion is the last government. Now you guys know that I've said this already. During the election, I kept saying to you guys, and even post-election, after the progressives was doing everything in their power to get back in, all the attempts at converting new government members, in the most shady of manners, right? I kept saying to you guys that the progressives has a lot of paychecks that they have to honor. And I kept saying that. And you guys were like, I don't know what Sandy talking about. You know, she must be crazy. I'm sure the progressives is putting that narrative out there. That's why they're working so hard into overtime to try to discredit us here at CMR. Because when we say something like that, if you don't believe us and you believe them, you know, they come out smelling like a bunch of roses. When in fact, when you see this report that we're going to review here, you know that bunch of roses over there is petrified. What's the word I'm looking for? Petrified? It stinks to high heavens. It's like a pig wallowing in the dirt, and, you know, in the sewer, not even the dirt, because pigs enjoy the dirt. So there's nothing wrong with them wallowing in the dirt. But this stinks to high heavens. And the Auditor General the Office of the Auditor General did not mince their words. Sue Winsper, who's a CPFA Auditor General, she was very crystal clear in her conclusions that what they did in relation to these foreign offices was illegal. Yes, honey child. She didn't really, I thought it was very, very interesting. She didn't use too much fanciful words to confuse people. She said, did this breach the law? Yes, it did. And here's why. I'm like, oh, girl, make it crystal clear. Putrid? Yes, thank you, Leslie. So yeah, Leslie says she wants to go to the Dubai World Expo. So it's a hot mess. Apparently, the progressives are trying to do, you know, a lot of damage control now because of this situation, and quite frankly, it's just horrible. It's just absolutely horrible what they have done. A lot of pockets had to get lined. Someone says the word that you're looking for is putrefaction. Is that the word I'm looking for? I don't know. But, you know, in common language, it's a bunch of horse. You all know what I mean. This is quite oh, hold on. Somehow I've opened another stream. Yeah, this is quite unbelievable, to be honest. I mean, well, not really. What am I talking about? It's not unbelievable for me, but it's unbelievable for me that it finally got put in writing of how bad it is. Like, now we have the proof. A lot of you guys are progressive supporters, and you sell whatever cockamamie, you know what, that they put out there, especially during an election. They tell you all kind of foolishness, and you guys have believed them. Someone just says, yes, y'all know exactly what I'm talking about when I say horse poo poo. Yeah. So anyway, so you know, this is just not a good look. Listen, Samuel Jackson got up, and he, during, I think it might have been his last meeting, he made a during his last meeting, he had a video from an attorney. I'm trying to remember his name now. Can somebody help me out? Well-respected attorney, been here for donkey years. And that attorney talked about the implications of what the progressive administration had been doing in terms of the financial, the world of finance. You know, all this AML stuff and our reputation on the world front. So, you know, we're supposed to be one of the largest financial jurisdictions in the world. We've got all sorts of complex, you know, legal entities that exist, company and corporations, all this kind of stuff. And they're always breathing down our back. We were talking about this yesterday, how we also have a reputation, quite frankly, for being, you know, not the best in the world with some compliance aspects. And so that's always getting us gray listed and blacklisted and every list in the world. And so this attorney, somebody remind me of his name, was talking about how we got blacklisted during the last administration because of their failings, because of their failure. That is why Tara Rivers had to go. I was saying to someone a couple of days ago about how someone can be incredibly intelligent and all this sort of stuff, and they still don't make for a good politician. You know, Tara might be an intelligent person, but Lord knows when it came to running the affairs of this country, she left a lot to be desired. And I'm sure she's a very nice person as well. I don't know her personally, but she's always struck me as being fairly nice and whatever. But she just didn't have a grapple on how to handle her business as Minister of Financial Services or Finance or whatever they were calling it at the time. And sadly for her, there are allegations that her, you know, strings were being pulled by certain law firms and certain other people. And maybe they misguided her. I don't really know, but we still got blacklisted to Ross, right? So, you know, the progressives was up to a lot. They were making a lot of promises that if they were returned to office, there were a lot of people who'd have nice, cushy jobs overseas. And that's what this report is all about. And there's a lot of people who have lost financially because of it. There are a lot of their backers who, you know, quite frankly, would have been very unhappy that they did not get the majority seats and they were not back in power. I keep telling you guys that, in fact, there are well-placed reports of certain people having contracts as consultants for certain organizations. And the only reason why they have those contracts, those consultancy contracts, is because they were in with the progressives government. And there was this understanding that they would lobby on behalf of these organizations to get their projects pushed through and get certain things done. I'm just saying those are very well-placed sources. And so I have no reason not to believe those things because, you know, in the real world, that's exactly what's happening. So I said it numerous times before, and now I'm here to give you the proof in the pudding in terms of what the progressives was up to. And quite frankly, why this is of grave concern to, you know, the governor and maybe even the police. Like, I don't know, the governor's saying that he did not appreciate it being leaked. And whilst I might understand that, I want to know what does the leaking have to do with the outcome? What's going to happen now? I mean, the public want to know what's happening in their country. And I do understand that sometimes an investigation is ongoing and you don't necessarily want that information out there because it could compromise your investigation. But maybe you guys need to talk to the people and tell us, how it's going to compromise what the outcome will be, the corrective measures that now need to take place. Because somebody should be going to jail, if you want my honest opinion about this. Was that going to happen if it was leaked or not leaked? Probably not. I don't know if they've contacted the police to file a report against Sir Alden McLaughlin. You give the man knighthood, and then we hear that his administration and his government was doing this sort of shenanigan. Right. What was the administrative corrective behavior or corrective, things that were going to be done? You were going to unknight him? I mean, do explain it to me, because I would honestly like to know. So it's quite unfortunate. While you guys were talking and praising the previous government about how well they were doing with the pandemic, little did you know. Yeah. Anywho, I feel sorry for y'all if you were buying that foolishness about, oh yes, knight him because he was so wonderful with the pandemic. Oh, we absolutely love it. He's done such a fantastic job. Well, you can't be wonderful with one little thing, right? And then you fail at everything else. You throw your people under the bus. You don't protect your people. In fact, you give a few elite individuals jobs in overseas offices to curry political favor. And everybody else is sitting down, barely making it. And you push all of this through on the eve of the election. And we're going to look at the timeline as we work through this morning. This just stinks of political, overtones. This is all about politics and getting the support of certain people who would then be instrumental in you trying to get elected or reelected. Trust me. It's a hot mess. Debbie says, yet Shirley Ralston received no recognition for saving her ASSES from a port. Well, she was part of the CPR group, so I guess if she got something, then our little friend over there, what's his face, would be crying and beating people up that he needed one too. Anyway, let's get on with it. So the introduction of this essentially says, good morning, Aliano, that here's the background of why this report was even done. So it says that on January the 12th, 2021, the cabinet approved the establishment of 3 Cayman Islands offices overseas in Asia, Europe, and North America. I'm going to talk about it here. It also approved the government's participation in the Dubai World Expo from October 2021 to March of 2022 through a partnership between the Ministry of International Trade and Investment, that was a new ministry, and the UK government's Department of International Trade. Now, let me stop there for a second about this ministry. Because when this current government got in, one of the first orders of business for them was to put an interim budget in place. You guys will remember this because you were up in arms and cussing them about how they approved a salary increase for themselves. And I kept telling you guys that that was not the case. By the way, thank you very much to an astute listener. The attorney that spoke via a video link on the platform of Sammy Jackson, I wish I could get that video this morning if anybody's listening and you have it, was Ian Paget Brown, well-respected attorney, is well-versed in financial services. And he made a powerful video in support of Sammy Jackson to say, this is why you should not re-elect Alden McLaughlin. Now, you, the people in the district of, where is he again? Not Prospect, but the one next to it. We never hear him doing anything for his constituents. I can't remember the name of the district right now. Red Bay. There you go. You all in the district of Red Bay clearly were not paying attention and you were not listening to the people, but I hope you're listening this morning. All 250 of you online, I really hope that you're listening. because this is very, very important, my friends. Yes, thank you. Red Beige. I can't even remember their names because they don't really get any representation as a constituency, right? Anyway, let's work our way through it. So this report goes through, and by the way, thanks and big shout out to someone said this morning, oh, I don't know if you should discuss this because, there's so many, the governor said he's investigating it. I said, well, what does that have to do with me discussing it? The governor said he is investigating it. That's all fine and dandy. I mean, good on him. He's investigating how the document was leaked. The document wasn't leaked to CMR this time, so that's none of my business. That's neither here nor there, right? None of my beeswax, as them young children would say, ain't got nothing to do with me, and it has nothing to do with my ability to discuss the contents therein. No one is saying, by the way, that this document is not the real deal, and it is signed by the Auditor General. Now, I don't know what the natural progression of this document would have been and how it would have eventually been tabled in the LA, tabled before Finance Committee. I don't know what the procedures are in terms of how it would have properly come to the people. Obviously, someone thought that people needed to have this information before that process took place, and they went to Wendy Ledger to leak the document. Now, I'm sitting here telling you I'm not going to knock that because we know that people have leaked documents to us before. And normally people do that when they feel like nothing's going to come out of it, right? When they feel like this is going to be another situation of hush, hush, sweep it on the rug, keep it moving. Nothing happens to Alden. He's knighted with all the pomps and circumstance. Everybody kissing his, as one West Bay fella said, high yellow behind and all this kind of stuff. And it's business as usual. Nothing changes. Well, I'm here for sure to say that I'm kind of sick and tired of the fact that nothing ever changes when damaging reports like this come out about our elected officials and some civil servants. Anyway, so they approved this in January of 2021. Now, everybody knows that the government understood that 2021 was an election year. Remember? We went to the polls last year. Keep that in the back of your minds now. The estimated total cost of these two projects was $5 million. And she's got a little exhibit here of all of the outlays of, what everything was going to cost. Okay, so we got all the breakdown for the overseas offices. The supporting legislation that was used to fund it. So we're going to talk about that here in a second because that's really important. So we have the first 3 months of operations for 2021 because they were planning on getting this done like ASAP, right? Remaining 9 months of 2021, they were going to allocate another $2 million. Then the Dubai Expo. Ooh, honey child, the Dubai Expo. Can somebody even tell me what this Dubai World Expo is? Because this was hell of a expensive promotion. $2.5 million for the Dubai Expo. So overseas offices total $2.5 million, and the Dubai Expo total $2.5 million. Let me just what is this Dubai World Expo? Apparently, the UK must have thought that we needed to be involved in this Dubai World Expo, so I think they might have approached us. So the expo is, let me see here now. Dubai is an ultra rich country, folks, and they put things on at another level. And I don't know that we necessarily needed to participate in this in the middle of a freaking pandemic. But anyway, this government wasn't concerned about the budget. $5 million for what essentially are probably completely unnecessary expansions into foreign markets. And by the way, let me just say this much about it, right? Now y'all want to sit down and talk about, the progressives are saying that this current government is going to put us into a lot of debt. Y'all need to pay attention. Please, I'm begging you, don't fall for useless rhetoric. Pay attention to the numbers and to what's actually happening. Just like when the government got in, they had to allocate funds to pay for stuff that the previous government had already committed to. including the salary increases. Y'all took this government to task over something that the progressives government did. And if there's one lesson to learn from this, and you're going to be shocked at what I'm going to tell you here in a minute, is that sometimes you cannot undo what a previous administration has already done. And so when I was sitting here like, y'all thought I was a fool, but I knew better, telling you all that this was already a signed deal. This government had, or not this government, the previous government had already given themselves the increases. It already had gone into effect. The only thing that was happening is that there was a temporary allocation until the new government, whoever would have gotten elected, had time to work on their budget. And that's why it came to light, because they had to then allocate the necessary funds to continue with the pay raises. And y'all like, no, they should have canceled it. They should have done this. Y'all don't even understand how the law works. When you breach the law, when you breach the constitutional provisions, you should be going to jail. And you don't just jump up and say, well, the previous government went through the process, actually the correct process. Y'all were just asleep at the wheel of giving themselves a pay increase, of giving themselves a separation package. Remember, we talked about that on this very program before the election. I talked about it on at least 2 separate shows, right? All of a sudden, if they decide not to run for office or they don't get voted back in, they were getting a severance package of, was it 3 months? We talked about it. And then a couple months later, y'all, like your brain's like a sieve. You forget everything. I talked about the pay increases, and I talked about the nice cushy package. I've never heard of an elected official being elected out of office and they can still get a severance package of 3 months worth of salary. Was it 3 months or 6 months? I think it's 3 months. How does that work? This makes me wonder how foolish we are as voters. And y'all were ready to put Alden McLaughlin back in. And there's some of y'all who still sitting down talking foolishness about, oh, he was the best thing that happened to this country and we need him more than we need this government. Y'all have to be crazy. He was hemorrhaging this government, but now wants to sit back and kick up his feet and criticize the current administration. But what are y'all spending money for? Well, a lot of that is for capital projects that you've already committed to. And they can't just undo it. So let the truth be known. They say speak the truth and shame the devil. I don't really care who the truth makes look bad. It has to be spoken. And there was a lot that was happening during the pandemic months that y'all were simply not paying attention to. And here we are knighting this man and singing his praises, and y'all upset because I'm not on the knighthood train. I know there's nothing we can do about it. He's been knighted. He's gotten the honor. It's worthless. When you look at his track record, that's why when the governor announced that, he said, oh, please don't politicize this. Well, that statement would have to be made because anyone who actually looked at his track record, even if you want to give him credit for being your savior, which is a bunch of horseradish during the pandemic, because that simply is not factually correct. But even if you wish to glorify that, right, give it all to him. What I'm telling you is there was much more that he was doing in terms of damage to this country that made absolutely no sense at all. And I really want you guys to pay attention to this report. So $5 million. Let's move on. So background to the commission and purpose of this report. So hear this little tidbit. After the election in April 2021, the new government raised concerns regarding the timing of the establishment of the new overseas offices and participation in the World Expo, given the proximity to the 2021 election, and potential non-compliance with the Public Finance and Management Act, which is called the PMFA. Keep that in your head, what that stands for. And the Public Service Management Act, which is the PSMA. They also raised concerns for the rationale for undertaking these projects, including the business cases and assessment of value for money. All right, back it up. This World Expo, by the way, somebody's asking what this is. It's hosted by Dubai, apparently from October of every year to March of every year. Of course, it was postponed in 2020 because of the pandemic. And then I guess it's back on. They were anticipating it being back on this year. I don't know if it actually happened or not. But anyway, so this expo is all about marketing and branding, I guess, you know, your country to people in Dubai. I don't really know. It's held in an ultra lush property that is 438 hectare area, which is over 1,000 acres between the cities of Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And it's near the border of Abu Dhabi. And the master plan design, they go on and on and on. It's a big to do if you want to really enjoy that type of luxurious life. Now, we've seen, quite interestingly enough, this government likes to tether on, they want to claim that they were for the people, not this government, the previous administration. They want to claim that they were for the people. And meanwhile, they were in Morocco, supposedly promoting the Cayman Islands, living a very lush life, rubbing elbows with royalty, with this Sheikh Mohammed, blah, 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 and rubbing with, Royal Highness, blah, 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 who was visiting from, representing the Queen or whatever. These, I'm not saying they may not have some purpose, but these ultra lush, events, if you will, have a certain degree of market value. Yes. Let me actually look this up because I want to remind myself, because I'm sure the last time they were in Monaco, was it Monaco? We covered it as a story, because of course the question is, okay, let's have some representation there. That was the yacht show. Let me see if I can find it on CMR. Give me 1 second. Let's have some representation there. But why do we have to send a contingent of so many people? What was the name of the yacht show? Because then, can anybody remind me of the Monaco yacht show, whatever it was called? That somehow we sent an entire contingent of people to. I'm trying to find it, because there was this whole shebang about this Monaco yacht show situation. Let me see if I can. Monaco yacht show. I can't remember the exact name, but it was some big thing some years back, right? We sent all kind of people to this. Let me see if I can narrow down the search a little bit here. I'm trying to find it. But anyway, we sent a lot of people to this event and spent a lot of money. Now, what's the value? Well, this Auditor General's report, one thing it did look at is the value that we're getting. And sometimes it's very difficult, especially with marketing campaigns and so on, to really break down the value. So somebody just reminded me, it was the Monaco Yacht Show of 2018. So definitely we would have had it on CMR. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to bring it up. So, it can be difficult to put an exact value on these types of events. But the question that I had with the Monaco Yacht Show back in 2018 is, why are we sending so many people? Why does Al didn't need to be there? Why does remember his political, what was his name? Advisor, who got a 40% salary increase during the last administrative reign. Why did he have to be there? Why are all these people there? Like, what is, oh yes, here we go. Y'all know CMR was on it even back then. All right, here we go. Okay. Here it is. Prince Albert to visit Cayman in 2020. Well, that was all sussed out during this visit. So this is what we got out of it. Prince Albert of Monaco is going to be coming to the Cayman Islands at our expense, no doubt. We'd be footing the bill for that. We'd be providing the security. We'd be doing everything to the tune of probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this is what was happening at this trade delegation, which was led by this same Ministry of International Trade, Investment, blah, blah, blah. Now, remember, folks, that this was a ministry, right? Which was, I think this was the 8th ministry, but this was an additional ministry that Alden McLaughlin himself set up because he thought that he needed a special ministry to deal with international trade, investment, aviation, and maritime affairs. One of the reasons why, just months ago when we were talking about the increase, and y'all again were up in arms about how can government do an increase, yada, yada, yada. I said to you guys, the bulk of that money that was appropriated and, signed off on, it was already in place, just that they needed more money to meet those financial obligations. The bulk of that, folks, was actually for this 8th ministry, to fund the 8th ministry. He already had committed, contracts signed, jobs put in place, people giving up all sorts of stuff to work in this ministry. So you can't say to Caymanian people all of a sudden that, oh yeah, well, the previous government made you a promise, right? And we are no longer able to fulfill that promise, especially when you have made certain drastic changes in your life in order to accommodate that contractual, that's a contract, folks. And when you start canceling people's contract, I'm going to tell you guys the God's honest truth. One of the issues that this current government was running into, the current administration, is that they had to be very, very careful how they moved with this whole new ministry and all these things that Alden had promised people, because people have an expectation. And if they acted on those expectations, now you have a situation where they could potentially be suing the government for breach of contract. Okay? And whether they're suing the PAT government or the progressive government, you know who pays the bill? Me and you, the people. That gets tagged on to our already exorbitant cost of living. And that's what happens. So you cannot just jump in and be like, oh, I'm going to make whatever decision I want because, the last administration got it wrong. Let me just completely undo it. Because by completely undoing it, you may be causing more problems than you recognize. So they went to this big shebang. And what we got out of it was, oh, Prince Albert is going to come and visit the Cayman Islands. Why? How does this further anything here? Like, do you guys actually think that we need to be marketing ourselves in Monaco? I'm just saying. Cayman has a well-established reputation. Now, I'm not saying in terms of financial services that there's not a degree of marketing that has to happen. But you can believe that 90% or more of the people who are out there in the financial world know very well about the Cayman Islands. Even when they're not. They call a lawyer. Oh, I want to set up an offshore company. They tell them, okay, these are your options. You got the Cayman Islands. You got TCI. You got BVI. You got all of our competitors. Channel Islands, Guernsey, all those people over there still competing with us. These are your options. This is what it's going to cost you. Here are the benefits to these different jurisdictions. You have people in China, y'all remember us talking about this before, who are sitting down at a computer, registering companies. So forget about Caymanians getting these job opportunities. You now have people in China being paid, in India, being paid rock bottom pricing, right? To sit there and read off of a script. Yes, you can get a company, offshore company in this jurisdiction, and these are the benefits, and this is pricing, and this is why you might want to consider this one over that one. Why are we going to this extra lush, Monaco trade show, whatever the heck this was, to try to promote ourselves? Who are we promoting ourselves to? This yacht club. Now, this yacht, what was it called? The yacht show. Now, listen, let me be very frank here. The yachting business and the ship registration business is actually good business for the Cayman Islands. So we can't put, even as it relates to financial services, we cannot put all of our eggs in one basket. So diversification is important. So we diversify in different things, not just company registration. We got trusts. We've got insurance companies. We have, yachting and shipping. So we do have a shipping registry here in the Cayman Islands. And at the end of the day, the shipping registry actually, is probably one of the better ones in the world in terms of its growth and its expansion. So the Monaco Yacht Club had enough representation from the Cayman Islands. We had the Honorable Joey Hugh, who joined the Premier. We had Chief Officer Eric Bush. We had the CEO of the Maritime Authority, Joel Walton. Head of the Office of the Premier, Roy Tatum. We had the Premier. We had private representation. So there was a lot of people from the DART organization. And you know what? That's their money. If they want to go there and rub shoulders with these people to sell them on, come and check out our DART properties. We've got lots of stuff up for grabs, blah, blah, blah. That's their money. That's on their dime. That's their business. I don't care what they do with their money. What I care about is when we have Joey Hugh, Eric Bush, Joel Walton, Roy Tatum, the Premier. How many people that is? Y'all keeping count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 government people who would have gone on the expense of us, we the people, on our tab. Now, they had time to donate some money to the Prince Albert II Foundation. They gave him $40,000. These were private entities. As far as I know, this wasn't government. So there's a bunch of them involved. Christie's, Provenance Properties, KPMG, all of them got together. When I saw this check, the first thought that came to my mind, all these companies get together and all they can do is give $40,000 US to a foundation. Let's be honest here. If you want to play with the big boys, you should at least try to make it big boy worthy in terms of what you're donating. $40,000 to these players, that's like no money. Prince Albert must have been like, these people are so cheap from the Cayman Islands. They can only give us $40,000 to my foundation. Child, he must have been like, When you come to Monaco, you have to be ultra ready for this sort of stuff. You know what I'm saying? You got to spend. You got to be able to spend. I see you, Jared. I see you. So, it's just one of those things. So anyway, they were there rubbing shoulders and whatever. And so out of this comes the fact that we're going to need an office in Asia. We're going to need an office here, there, and everywhere. Okay, so let's go back to the documentation at hand here, folks. Jared, do you have an opinion that you're ready to share right now? Because I'm going to bring you in and pull you back out because I really want to go through this document in detail. Hold on a second.
Yeah, just to put a little humor to it before we get serious, it seems a bit hocus pocus. That is the term that I'll use for anything that's a bit outrageous. I don't want to jump to anything really yet. It's just there's a timeline to how everything is going, right? And I think the government did not explain the reasons behind what they were doing, and I think that is the big problem. Communication
which
is key.
government are you referring to?
The previous administration that so honorably knighted Sir Alden McLaughlin for his contribution. What I will say, there are a series of events leading up to present day that have to be looked at. I don't want to touch the OAG's report, but what I will say is that since the UK left the European Union in 2016, we would not have had representation from being delisted, and so that might have propelled the attitude for certain representation. Now, whether that can be confirmed or denied, that is not for me to do. That is not my occupation. I am just merely an analyst that looks at the facts from how I see it. Now, in terms of how it came down to election, well, closer to the election timeline, there are stipulations as it pertains to what a government can or cannot do. I think you've highlighted that in some detail.
I haven't even gotten there yet, but we're getting there.
I would want to mention because I noticed the OAG gave her opinion, and I hope it's from a unbiased opinion. No, she said it was not exceptional. But at the end of the day, the OAG does not run the government of the Cayman Islands. She does not know what is deemed exceptional in certain circumstances. If the premier deems
I'm gonna respectfully disagree with you, but go ahead. I'll let you finish.
But this, I have to come from an oppositional standpoint, because we can't always agree on things. Hence democracy wouldn't really be so nice and wonderful. The reason why I say that, and I'm not taking sides in any administration. I don't like none of them to a degree. The reason why I say that is because we had seen in the last 18 months, I think we were on the blacklist, where we were being pushed to the blacklist, and then we had to put in amendments to laws or acts to be taken off. And then I would say, if we are going to be on the gray list or any list, it would put us in a precarious situation. And of course, it would have to be an exceptional circumstance. We know that the cabinet in its capacity can make orders in cabinet. And so it would seem as if that was the modus operandi for signing off and okaying these things. The way in terms of how it was done, was it done the right way? I don't think so. So there's certain things that I disagree with the OAG's report, and there are certain practices that went on that I quite frankly don't agree with. So I think with you going into the report, I think I can speak to it when we get there. But that's just my train of thought, if it makes any sense.
It doesn't, and I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
So hang tight in the back room, and we're going to break it down. So one of the things that this report that the Auditor General was tasked with, folks, and I do thank Jared for his comments, but one of the things that she was tasked with, and although she's not a politician, it is her responsibility to look at the facts of a situation and see if a business case was made. And despite what her young Jared, what his opinion is, I can tell you that she concluded that there were no exceptional circumstances, especially for the timeline that they used in order to push this through. So let's actually read now the Auditor General's report. So she gives at page number 2 the reason why the report was even done, the investigation was even carried out. So for example, here we are, April 2021, the PAT government, the new government, raised concerns. And as a result of them raising concerns, the governor then asked the Auditor General to carry out an independent review of the past government's activities and processes in relation to the following matters. So her remit was limited in this report to the establishment of the overseas offices in Asia, Europe, and North America. And secondly, to entering into a contractual arrangement to establish a presence at the upcoming Dubai World Expo. So she does not have to be a political figure in order to actually speak on this. That's why she's there. She is the Auditor General. She has to be impartial. She has no concern about politics. She is simply going to look at the facts before her and make that decision. Now, if a political decision has been made and done in the right way and justifiable, right? So what Jared is saying, and we're going to get to that here, is the way in which they did it using the respective sections of the PFMA. They could legally have done it that way if exceptional circumstances could be established, because that's one of the criteria. So he's arguing that in his mind, it was exceptional circumstances. Well, the Auditor General does not agree. And this has nothing to do with politics. She does not agree because of the timeline presented. And we're going to go through all the details of why she doesn't agree. So let's get into it. Scope of her report. So the scope of her examination, including the activities. And by the way, thank you to our astute listeners. One person said, Sandy, the World Fair has been happening for many years and in many different locations. And they've sent me a little bit of information on the history of the World Fair. So it was just Dubai. It was just their turn, essentially, coming up to be hosting that event. So this is an annual event. It's a large international exhibition designed to showcase the achievements of nations around the world. Now, it doesn't sound like we've ever committed to it before, but again, the one in Dubai must have been, or the one that was planned for Dubai must have been particularly attractive for whatever reason. So, you know, I don't know, but it's been happening. Seems like since 1928, it's been going on for a really long time, and they've had it kind of all over the world. So they were supposed to be hosting the expo in 2020. And they said Buenos Aires was going to host the next specialized expo in 2023, which would be next year. So lots of information here. If you're interested, I'll share the link about the World Expo and the World Fair and how it works. And you guys can certainly look it up. So there's specialized expos, which are formerly known as international recognized exhibitions. And they focus on a specific theme. So here's one talking about future energy. That was Expo of 2017. The living ocean and coast was the Expo of 2012. Leisure and the age of technology. That was in Brisbane, Australia. That was the Expo of 88 and so on. Yes. So if you're interested in learning more about that, let me just share the link. All right, there you go. So she says that the audits, the scope of the examination is, again, related to the setting up of the 3 overseas offices and participation in the Dubai World Expo. So her office conducted interviews, collected and reviewed documentation, took legal advice to obtain evidence to support the findings, and so on. By the way, somebody just said to me that the previous administration, the Pat government, is actually over at Radio Cayman right now, talking to whoever, the 5 listeners, claiming that they are unwilling to, they declined to speak on this report because Roy says that he's not seen or reviewed it yet. Now, of course you haven't, Roy. It's publicly available. If I could print it off yesterday and be up till 1:30 in the morning reading it to try and inform the people of this country what shenanigans you guys have been up to. Apparently it's Mr. Roy and Joey on this morning. You guys couldn't read it. What are you doing? What are you so busy doing exactly? And not like you hustling to pay your CUC bill like the rest of us or pay your mortgage. You're too busy to read a damning report about your government and respond to it on OC's program this morning. Y'all are truly a bunch of jokers. I mean, I tell you the God's honest truth. These guys are, I'm just shocked. This is amateur hour. And you know why? Because they know that 40% of you guys are so fooled into thinking that they're an awesome government and they never did anything wrong. So they can get on the show this morning and present that kind of rhetoric. And the old people over there, over at Radio Cayman, I'm not trying to be insulting when I said old, right? Dinosaur OC is talking about, yes, okay, that's a valid explanation. You haven't had time to read it yet. If someone issued a damning report about some decisions that I had made in my job on behalf of the people, I would be the first one to read it. I wouldn't be a no talk show and haven't read it, that's for sure. Y'all better go sit down. So the audit was solely limited to addressing the following 10 objectives, and she lists all 10. So I'm not going to go through all 10, but the conduct of the activities for the above noted projects, breaches to applicable sections of the relevant law, to determine the materiality of any breaches, to determine if activities conducted during the 2021 election period and post-election government formation, formation process immediately thereafter has resulted in the establishment of binding commitments. All right, let me stop right here. You guys will know full well that when all of this went down, hello, Mr. Fred. When all of this went down with the post-election, when Alden was working overtime to flip Sabrina, he was working to flip Jay from East End. He was working on Andre from West Bay. He was working on Rankin, can't think of his first name right now. Ugh, you guys know what I'm talking about. From East End, right? I said to you guys, he has a lot of contracts that he has to fulfill. People, listen to me and believe me when I tell you, this power grab, this inability, even now, of Alden to let go of the fact that he lost the election and he was ultimately not the people's choice. He cannot swallow it because he has too much to deliver to the people. Too many promises that he had inked, and heads were going to roll if that did not happen. Y'all think y'all still don't believe me? The Auditor General just said it in her report. That one of the things that she was looking at is the post-election government formation process, my apologies, immediately thereafter. Why do you think they were trying to flip Sabrina? Sabrina don't have a clue. She don't know what's going on. Fresh meat. Isaac didn't have a clue. They don't know what the progressives had been up to and what they had committed to. That's why Alden was driving up to East End under the cover of darkness. Well, he wasn't too smart because he went in his official car. I mean, if you really want to go under the cover of darkness, drive your damn self there in an undercover car, but he's not that bright. He's taking his driver, going to meet with Isaac's committee, promising Isaac, if I get back in, you can have a ministry. East End needs a ministry. We will make that happen for you. He was willing to sell his soul to the devil because there's a lot of promises that had been made. And I'm going to tell you guys in a minute how in the real world, those promises do make a difference. And they will leave this current government on the hook for stuff that they may not necessarily be committed to. It goes on to determine if the conduct of activities in the above noted projects breaches the law. By the way, she concludes that it does. To determine the extent to which business cases were developed for the above noted projects and the governance process. To determine the governance process surrounding the adherence to any such developed business cases. Number 8. To determine the extent which the recruitment process of the overseas office was fundamentally sound. It wasn't sound because they did not interview. Listen, they did not advertise these positions as should be required by law. Now, let me say something about that before I move on. You have high-ranking government officials right now, and I'm gonna name drop a few so that y'all are aware of what I am talking about this morning. Huh? Let's take one or two examples. Melinda Montemayor. She is a senior human resource manager, and I forget what ministry she's in, child. But whatever ministry she's in, she was promised one of these cushy jobs overseas. Wow. First of all, I'm not quite sure why she would be qualified. And you see, when you don't go through the process and you don't advertise these jobs, you don't know on what basis any of this stuff is being done. So what unique qualifications as an HR manager would have made her the ideal candidate to run an overseas office or to be a deputy to help run an overseas office? I'm just wondering. Because I don't know of any, quite frankly. And this is what was happening. Oh, by the way, Wendy is coming on. So let me just, I'll send her the link. I think she's going to come on a little bit closer to the 9 o'clock hour. So let me just confirm 1 second. So you don't know. You really don't know, what the situation is. You don't know on what basis someone was selected versus somebody else. There's nothing to FOI. Oh, how many people applied for that job? You didn't do it the right way. You didn't advertise it. You didn't do any kind of proper recruitment process. You just went around and picked people, I guess, politically who are your friends, who you like, your Domino's partner, side piece, a girl. Like, I'm not saying that that's what happened. What I'm saying is we don't know. Because when you do not follow the correct process, you will never know. Right? You never know what happened here. These essentially were civil servants, in my opinion, who were politically appointed to civil servant jobs. And that should never in a million years happen. They were political appointments. Now, let me be very clear. The government has some degree, the political government, of leeway when it comes to making political appointments, but it is abundantly clear which of those are political appointments and which are not. Who's going to run the offices for the MPs? That's a political appointment. Some of them have their mama running it. Some of them have whoever. That's a political appointment. Since the last election now, those individuals actually, because of how, constitutional changes and stuff that were made, they are paid from the public purse, which they were always paid from the public purse. But what they used to do before is they give the MP the stipend for his office, like $5,000 for salaries or whatever, and he could allocate it however he wants. Now it's like, no, these people are going to have a proper contract under government, right, under parliament, and they will get government benefits. So they're going to get health insurance and pension for the duration of their contract. Their contract expires on election day. So if you don't get back in, they're out of a job immediately. They're not getting no 3-month severance pay, by the way. Just a FYI. They don't get that benefit, but the MPs will get it thanks to the previous government. Political appointments, right? Includes all sorts of things. So for example, we have Nicholas DaCosta. He works as, Nick, help me out with your official title, but that's a political appointment. He's not a civil servant. He works in the premier's office and he is employed, to do a very specific job. I guess the premier has given him a job description. He essentially answers to the premier. Pilar Bush, she just got a new job. She's not a civil servant. That strategist position within the premier's office, that is a political appointment. It's the equivalent of the Roy Tatum. So Roy Tatum under the Progressives government was a political appointment. What was the other fellow there from Georgetown Central that the premier replaced Kenneth with? Frank Cornwall. That is a political appointment. So there are certain positions that the government can get politically to appoint people in, but they should not be doing that with civil servants. Melinda, Julie from NRA also was going to the Asia office. In fact, let me just get the names here because I did get some of the names sent to me this morning. Let me just double check. And again, I'm not speaking on this because I know anything about these people other than the fact that they were going to be in these positions. So we also had, let me see who else. Oh, Lord, who else was going? Deborah Bodden, Jean DaCosta, and Chris Dugan. I'm going to talk about Chris here in a second. They were all going to the overseas offices, yes? Now, a lot of people will message me on occasion, say, Sandy, I need a job. Tell the premier, tell this minister, tell this when I need a job. And I say to them, let me be very clear. Politicians are not supposed to have anything to do with the hiring and firing and promotions or anything like that of civil servants. It is a big no-no. They're not supposed to commingle that situation and get involved. That is the responsibility of the deputy governor because he is in charge of the civil service under the governor. And then he has his chief officers and other people who are responsible for that. No politician. So how do you handpick, without advertising or anything else, a Melinda Montemayor, a Chris Dugan, who else did I say, Deborah Bodden, or whoever these people are? How does that happen? What was the recruitment process? Well, let's read the Auditor General's report for some of these conclusions. So she has a whole preface to her findings. She talks about the relevant sections of the PMFA 2020 revision. And it says that we're an exception. This is really important to what Jared was saying earlier. Jared, are you paying attention? I want you to listen to me now, because I know you're young and eager, but you got to learn. It says where an exceptional circumstance has occurred during a financial year, the cabinet may authorize executive financial transactions for which no appropriation exists if, and then it has two things that must be met. The executive financial transactions directly relate to and attempt to remedy the effects of the exceptional circumstance, and it doesn't say or, it says and the total amount authorized is no more than 5% of budgeted executive revenue for the financial year. Those are the two things that must be met for it to be an exceptional circumstance. Jared, you following my logic now? I'm just going by what the expert is saying here, right? Because trust me, the Auditor General, this is not just her opinion, right? She's not a lawyer. So what she did to augment her report and the findings in her report and the opinions that she ultimately came to is she consulted with attorneys on this. This is my interpretation. And this isn't her interpretation. This is exactly what the law says. This is section 11.5 of the PMFA, the 2020 revision. So you people know that you can go online and you can look up any piece of legislation now in the Cayman Islands, folks. No more excuses for not being able to know what the law says. Right? So you have the Public Management and Finance Act. Let's look it up. And you see, folks, when you are being led to the slaughter, yes, and no one is encouraging you to look at legislation, to read legislation for yourself, to try and figure things out, there's a reason why they want to keep you in the dark. I am always interested in politicians who get elected who can't even read, much less read a piece of legislation and try to understand what it's saying. Now, not everybody is a lawyer. Not everyone's going to have an expert level of understanding. That's fine. But they don't even attempt to understand what the law says. So no wonder they can breach the laws very, very easily. However, that was not the case with this previous government. Let's be very clear. Alden McLaughlin is an attorney at law. He's been a partner in a law firm. And recently he was crowned QC as well, which means that he's supposed to be a little bit extra special in the world of law. A QC, that's a big thing. Supposed to be. Now they're watering down all these titles by giving them to Tom, Dick, and Harry, willy-nilly. But regardless, this is what's happening. So those are the two things that must be met. Okay? Section 1116 references the PFMA definition of an exceptional circumstance. So it tells you the two things that have to happen when an exceptional circumstance has occurred. Then she goes on to look beyond that. Okay, and I'll send you guys, if you want a copy of the law, it's 88 pages, but she was looking at 1115. And section 11, let me just show you here, folks, deals specifically with, let me increase it so you can actually see it. So kind of small. Okay, there we go. Woo, now you can see it. Section 11 deals with the authorization in advance of appropriation. So if you scroll down now to 11.5, let's just see where it is. I need to decrease it a little bit so I can actually see it. All right, let's go. 11.5, this is all the definition section still. Oh, How did I get all the way down here? Where's 11.5? Section 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So authorization in advance of appropriation. 11.5 specifically talks about when an exceptional circumstance has occurred. So you see this section 11.5? This is precisely what she quoted. I'm going to just screen grab this and pull it in as an image. Give me 1 second here. This is a section, folks, in this Auditor General's report that she quoted. She said, this is what the law says. Section 11.5. She is guided by the law. Okay? Not by her feelings, not whether or not she likes this government. That has nothing to do with it. Section 11.5 says the following. There it is. Plain and simple as day. That's what the law says. That's what she quotes at point number 7 of her report. Then she goes on to look at 11.6. Because 11.6 specifies what the definition of exceptional circumstance is. Okay, give me 1 second. So Jared was saying, well, you know, we got blacklisted. Maybe that's the rationale for this, and that would be considered an exceptional circumstance. Well, let's look at the law and see if it meets the definition of an exceptional circumstance. You look at it for yourselves. Here's where it says, where the cabinet has authorized executive financial transactions in accordance with subsection 5, which was this one here, because they're claiming exceptional circumstance, they have to make sure that the following has occurred. Okay? Number 1, make a statement to the Legislative Assembly. Pump the brakes. Say, what? Was that done? You can't claim an exceptional circumstance if you're not even following the procedure that is required to claim an exceptional circumstance. Subsection little 1. The exceptional circumstance and its nature and how it complies with the definition of the term. So in other words, you have to make your case to the Legislative Assembly. At the next sitting, it says, was that done? Number 2, the type and amount of the executive financial transactions authorized. The effect of the authorizations or likely authorizations on compliance with the principles and responsible financial management specified in section 14. The authorized executive financial transactions are to be included in a supplementary appropriation bill introduced to the LA by the 31st of March following the financial year to which those transactions related. Now, let me back up here a second. Here we were saying that this government fast forwarded the general election, because remember they brought it forward, in order to not have to deal with the McKeever-Bush situation. Well, they certainly had time to do other things, because now we're going to review the timeline a little bit. So we see the relevant sections of the law that she was looking at. She also looked at section 12, right? Talks about executive expenses, category of transfer of payments, and so on. She looked at the PSMA. She looked at the Constitution, because the actions also breach the Constitution, apparently. Let's move on. By the way, hold on a second. I'm talking about this report, and I could just be showing you guys this on screen. My apologies. Because I printed it out so I could properly have a read through it. But let me also make sure that you can see it for yourself, so you don't have to worry about a Sandy making anything up. Let's go full screen with this. We'll increase it so you can see enough of it. So I'm now at page 5, honey child. I haven't gotten very far. My apologies. All right. So So she talked about the scope of her report. This is what I was just going over, 11.5, 11.6. She goes on to talk about section 12. Can you guys see that okay? Do I need to make it a little bit bigger? That's at 200%. Let's make it at 250. I want to make sure y'all can see good and clear. Section 12. Then she talks about the PSMA. So these are two different pieces of legislation, to be clear. Right? So she's looking at the Public Finance and Management Act, that's the PMFA, and the Public Service Management Act, which is the PSMA. Yes? All right, so she talks about section 5. Executive expenses incurred. Right? So cabinet can actually authorize certain expenses, executive expenses for the output group, category of transfer payments, and so on. So cabinet has certain powers. The PSMA, now we're looking at section 6.1. The power to employ all civil servants rests with the governor acting in his discretion. And he delegates it in accordance with section 7.1 to the head of the civil service. This is France Manderson, who is also known as the deputy governor. That is why when I just said, folks, it's not a situation of the political arm of government getting involved. They don't do that. They're not supposed to do that. That is in direct contravention of the PSMA. They are breaching the law if they do so. Let me take a little break to read some of your comments because I see a lot of comments coming in, child, and I'm on a roll here. So truly, the ugly truth says the laws or constitution not followed. No new policy cannot undo that, period. There has to be accountability for this, not sugarcoating with buzzwords about new policies, lessons learned, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, the governor has to be diplomatic. I guess the premier up to a certain point has to be diplomatic. By the way, the premier will be on this evening, folks, because unfortunately for him, or fortunately, I don't know how you want to look at it, this evening is his premier access.
The Cold Hard Truth now has your Premier Access with Premier Panton.
Hello everyone, this is Wayne Panton. Come and join me on Cayman Mar Road's Premier Access every other Wednesday at 7 p.m. for a frank and open Q&A session. I'm here to answer your questions about the issues that concern you the most. Tune into YouTube and Facebook Live on Wednesday. We will see you there.
Full transparency, answering your questions, down to earth, accountable, and accessible to who matters. You. Don't miss Premier Access on the Cold Hard Truth, spilling the tea like no one else.
All right, folks, he'll be on this evening. I don't know if he'll be addressing this or not. I'm sure he's read the report, but he may not have much to say. So thank you for your comments. Thank you, Miss Emma. Siobhan says the PPM does hardly anything in the hundreds of thousands, try millions. What a mess. Wow. Anyway, let's continue on. Thank you, Aliano. Sandra, thank you. Siobhan says behaving like I don't want to go to Monaco. Marshall Jamar says this is Fred Booth Jr. from Prospect. Thank you. Linda, we were in the blacklist because the former government, now opposition, failed to meet the pre-agreed deadline to pass the laws. Yes. Aliano says that Monaco is highly overrated. Well, listen, if you fall into that world, I suppose you that's what you're into. I don't know. Marshall says Roy is well aware of what's going on. So this is in relation to him over at Radio Cayman claiming that he hasn't had time to read this report yet. It's not like it's a 50 million page report. It's only 19 pages. Like I said, that's easy bedtime reading for most people, especially if you're supposed to be a representative of the people. He didn't want to read it And I'm sure he's actually read it. Debbie says the tea is piping hot today. Yeah, everything is coming to light. Well, not everything. Wee says CMR is on fire. Let it burn. Well, the truth. So Sandra says we can't just send one person to these world events. Really? So setting up all these offices and spending almost $6 million is okay with you? And sending an entire contingent of individuals. Y'all saw that photo I shared earlier of all the people who went. We needed that many people. Come on now. Come on. Really? Anyway, let's continue. Eden, good morning. He thanks Sandy for delving into the actual issue. The pack, please, we need to take the pile of numerous OAG reports, including this one, and follow them through. Good morning, Miss Moya. Carlos, stay tuned. Keep up now. We got to move along, but keep up. All right. So these are the people who are responsible for hiring and reallocating and promoting and all kind of stuff of civil servants, right? The Constitution section, child, I forgot all about my breakfast. How y'all made me forget I had oatmeal? I was telling you I was supposed to be eating this morning to have energy, but child, I didn't even need it. What a hot mess. Now my oatmeal's cold. So section 55(1) of the Constitution states that the governor shall be responsible for the conduct of certain things. You know, they're always talking about this section 55(1) because when the governor does something that you all don't like, you say to yourself, oh no, he has stepped out of his bounds. Well, here we have, folks, a political group of people, the progressive government, who themselves have stepped out of their bounds. Section 55(1) of the Constitution. Look at D. He is responsible for the appointment, including promotion, transfer, appointment and contract, appointment to act in an office of any person to any public office, the suspension, termination of employment, dismissal, retirement, etc. All right, let me break this bit here down, right? So, folks, in the Constitution of the Cayman Islands, which is the highest law of the land, you can't get any higher than the Constitution. That document is supposed to supersede everything else. That's why when someone thinks that you've done something to them, the first thing they want to look at is their Bill of Rights and their constitutional rights. Because if you breach the Constitution, it matters not under which servient law you would have done so under. No other law can give you the ability to do something that the Constitution does not give you the ability to do. So the progressives had no legal remit, no government. Progressives, PAC, ABC government, XYZ government, no government has the right to get involved. See it right here in the Constitution, section 55(1). This is Constitutional Law 101. Whose responsibility is it? It's the governor. And he delegates it to the deputy governor, because the governor ain't got no time to be looking at y'all employment contracts and hiring whatever. Now, there are certain jobs that he is going to be very instrumental in hiring. The police commissioner, for example, there's a council that, involved in the recruitment of that individual. But everything else, the deputy governor is the head of the civil service. And then, it falls from there, chief officers and so on. On another date, we can look at the organizational chart for government, but it does not include any politician. Nowhere on that is it going to say the premier of a country, of this country, or any minister can get involved in the hiring of civil servants. Okay, so the Auditor General goes on. Now, this is what I want to get to next. Exhibit 2. The timelines here are extremely important. My God, they are so important. September of 2018, in fact, September the 21st, there was a submission of a cabinet paper to consider the Hong Kong office. And then in relation to the expo, the UK government contacts CIG UK office to discuss participation in the Dubai Expo. All of that happened in September of 2018. Right. The timeline here, folks, is extremely important because it leads the Auditor General to ultimately conclude that there was no exceptional circumstance. And one of the things she used to come to that conclusion, which we'll see here in a minute, is this very timeline. How can it be exceptional to rush all of this through on the eve of an election, during an election, after an election, when you'd been talking about it for years? How does it become a national urgency? There's nothing in the timeline that should make it so. In fact, by December of 2018, they did a little bit more, a letter of entrustment for the Hong Kong office. Former Premier, that'd be Alden McLaughlin, announces the establishment of these overseas offices on December the 17th. And then they do nothing. All of 2019, nada, zip, zilch, zero happens. Almost 2 years later. Now, let's give them a little bit of credit. 2020, the earthquake hits. I guess that shook them up a little bit for a day. Pandemic hits. All right, fine. So they did nothing from December the 17th until November the 18th. But of course, you know now by November, what was actually happening is candidates were starting to declare. People were coming out. And the government's like, ooh, yeah, we're in the heel of an election now. Let's get ready. So then they issue a cabinet paper proposing participation in the Dubai Expo. Wendy, I see you, and I'm going to pull you in here in just a second. Then we go to December the 1st of 2020. They have a stakeholder meeting to discuss the location of these offices. January, cabinet approves participation in the expo. Now look at how things start to happen real fast. January the 5th, January the 12th, January the 21st, February the 1st, job adverts for overseas reps. January the 1st, and then by February the 1st, then by February the 10th, the governor announces new date for election. Everybody see that? That's kind of important. And then they continue the day after that announcement. Oh, let's get the Brussels office going. Let's get the Washington office going the next day. So it's like these people sat down on their royal knighted behinds for years and did nothing. And then all of a sudden, an election year, election date announced February 10th, then you start to really work hard. The 11th, the 12th, March the 3rd, revised election date. So election happens April the 14th, and they still start doing stuff. I still continue. Contracts of employment for overseas offices. How do you, when you're no longer elected, so you didn't take the government, how do you between the 9th and the 20th, well, I mean, it would have been April, was the government formed by the 20th? Maybe they were still horse trading is what happened. But how do you go from you don't have the government to you're still getting contracts signed? You know, I have said this before, and I'm going to bring Wendy in now because we're going to return to this timetable here in a second. Oh, yes, my apologies. The new government wasn't sworn in until the 21st. So you see the timing? The day after election, you have a letter of entrustment for the Brussels office. And up to the 20th, you're still pushing contracts signed. Because remember, they were still hoping against hope that they were still going to be taking the government. Remember, Roy McTaggart, my apologies, was sitting there saying, oh, he's talking to the now premier. He's talking to this one. He was putting so much misinformation and straight up lies out there about the formation of the government. And it's quite interesting when you look at this timeline that they were still acting like they were the government in power. And I've said this before today, I'm going to say it again. There's certain things that should never happen once an election has been called. No new contracts, no signage of anything. Because remember, they also went and signed the DART deal with the, what's it called? We're not calling it the dump anymore. What's the fancy word we're going to use for it now? The recycling facility and blah, blah, blah. None of these things should happen once you decide to call a new election. The only thing should be happening is the bare necessities to continue running the government so it doesn't fall apart. Signing of new deals, signing of new contracts, signing employment. None of that. Making these big commitments should never, ever happen. Wendy, good morning.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly clear.
Fabulous.
I was just going through the report.
Timeline.
I haven't gotten very far, to be honest. I just got into the timeline.
Which is quite important. Yeah, it's quite important. I heard you saying that. But one of the things, requests made for letters of entrustment. Who makes those requests? Who makes them?
Yeah.
It's the governor.
Let me talk to you about this timeline for a second here, right? And what is an obvious overstepping of politicians getting into the promotion and hiring and so on of civil servants. This is really quite blatant. And first of all, congratulations to CNS on breaking this story. Obviously, somebody's going to come under some heat now to see what your source was for the report. But I understand they left it on the proverbial windshield of the vehicle. Good for you. So what were your initial thoughts when you saw this report?
Well, I've known about it for quite some time.
Okay.
And I had a sort of fairly good idea of what was in it. When I tried to get it, when I started my investigation, because at first I didn't even know, I was informed of the report, but I didn't know it was by the OAG. So when I realized it was one of Sue's reports, I contacted her, but she explained to me that she wasn't in a position to release the report because it wasn't one instigated by her office under any of her. It was a special request of the governor. So I went to the governor's office. They said nothing. They just pointed me to the deputy governor. So I made an effort. No, in fact, I just made a media request to the deputy governor for the report, and that was declined. And so I made an FOI request, and then the FOI request rolled on. And then on I think it was in January, they asked for longer. They asked for another 30 days because that's when they confirmed that there was an internal inquiry going on. And then they'd said that internal inquiry was due to be over by the 31st, which is the day I published the story, because at that point I was like, well, I've given them, I like to, I'm not mean. Do you know what I mean? I give people a fair shake to answer and to respond, because sometimes, you get hold of the wrong end of the stick as a report. You're only told one side. So right. I, as you rightly pointed out, I had the windshield moment over the weekend by coincidence. And then there comes along the Monday. By 5 o'clock that day, I still hadn't heard anything back from them. And that was the date that they'd given me for the FOI request, as in I would get some kind of response at that point, but I didn't. So I pressed publish.
Good.
So right. I'd already known about it. As I say, I already knew that there was an issue, but also it was evident that there was an issue. I think if you just go back to the December, the Finance Committee, where Andre Ebanks, the new minister who's now responsible for that, was explaining his sort of school of thought about this type of promotion, and how he wanted to approach it. Because I don't think we can pretend that this wasn't about the former premier's new job post-election. That's what this was about. So this was creating a new kind of role for him, because what do you do as an ex-premier? I mean, being a backbench in your own government when you were once premier is always it's difficult for any leader to do that. And so I think it was apparent that he was looking for something that would perhaps give him an aside role that could be considered equally as important. And I think he wanted to play the role of an ambassador. And so having offices to flip between and expos to attend and, international events to go to, but because it was very odd that you would carve out maritime affairs, which is very much part of the financial services sector. The shipping register is a huge part of the financial services sector. So the fact that you would carve that bit out, plus the airline register, you'd carve that out, and international trade. Well, we don't really have international trade in that respect. I mean, we have the financial services sector, which was still going to be a separate ministry, which was odd and strange. And so it did feel like that this was all about creating his post-premiership job. And don't forget, they had convinced everyone, I think, all of the civil servants, senior civil servants, and certainly the governor, that they were going to win, and that there was not even a doubt that they were going to win. And on election day, they still felt they'd won.
Oh yes, and even after that, to this day they won't really admit that they have not won.
No, I mean Joey's famous comment: "We won the election, but we lost the government."
Yeah. Unbelievable. And I mean, that's why I think in hindsight, there's a lot of things that I was saying at the time, even in relation to, there was a lot on the table for the progressives to lose. And that is why they were willing to do anything in order to get back in power. And now that this report has come out, this is only in a very specific and limited way confirmed what I, was being told by well-placed sources and the information that I had, that there was a lot riding on this, and they couldn't just go quietly into the sunset and say, okay, we've had our 2 terms, we've done the best that we could do.
To be fair, no government wants to do that. I mean, you don't go into politics to lose. I mean, and whatever skullduggery or commitments they had to rich backers, whatever, I don't know. I mean, that always swirls around politics here because we're so secretive about who pays the piper. But that's not unusual. That's nothing unique. You can't blame them for wanting to win. But at the end of the day, when you do things like this, prior to, you're going to get caught. This is the thing, is that they still live sometimes like it's 15 years ago, and that no one's asking any questions, but so unfortunately, as is often the case, certain people, fingers are going to get pointed, and certain people are going to get into a whole heap of trouble here because, I mean, on this occasion, they also played roles in which they should know better. But at the end of the day, the most important thing that the Auditor General has pointed out in this thing is that we desperately need a policy to prevent this kind of skullduggery going on, because there's two problems about this signing stuff and committing another administration to big spending in the election. It's not just the money, it's the fact that it taints an election, because it was like you suddenly, after how many years did we start? When did we start on the waste to energy project? I remember ages ago, back in McKeever's day when he was leader of government business, and they had a cross-party trip somewhere to go look at a WTE place. So I'm talking like 2006 or 7, 14, 15 years ago, they started on this WTE. And then we signed the deal for the WTE facility literally 6 weeks before the election.
Exactly.
15 years later. You couldn't wait another 6 weeks.
At the time that happened, Wendy, I said that I cannot believe, and this is where there has to be some, as you say, some policy and legislative changes.
Because you're now going to go on the campaign trail and say, oh, look what we did. We've signed this. They did the road deals, the East-West Arterial. They did that. And then they've done these overseas offices, although the overseas offices I don't think was necessarily something that was going to win them any favors, because I think by that time it became a bit of an issue on the campaign trail that where was the direction of flow, as it were, for that sector. I think although it wasn't a major part of the campaign trail, it did get raised, and I know some of the PACT members did question that as to why people were spending money on that sort of thing in the middle of a pandemic. so it did get raised. So it became, and it might not have been to their advantage, to be honest. But I think the things like the regen signing and it's very clear that we need a policy that you cannot you cannot commit another administration to a major project 2 months, 3 months before an election. You've got to have some space. Because this is like, now we know, you only have to take a look at all of the public statements that Andre Ebanks has made. And every single one, he is questioning huge elements of this report in terms of it not making any sense. And that right from the get-go, he has raised the issue of, we don't need, and he's made it clear in the Finance Committee, we don't need an office in Brussels. We have one in London. You know, it's a train ride away. You don't need one. And, you know, Hong Kong, the most expensive city in the universe.
Yes.
B, fighting and trouble going on, you know, with all the political situation with China in Hong Kong and COVID. I mean, it's just not the place. But who decided it was the place? Where's the business case? All of these things have been raised. And I think, you know, he made it clear that, you know, where his policy lies and bringing all of these elements back into financial services, because the aviation register and the shipping register are part of financial services. They're not a separate entity. And it's important because all of the people that work in financial services are people that do the registry and all that, you know what I mean? So it's insane to split it up. So his objection to these policies is logical. It's not like he's doing it, oh, you were the previous governor and I'm just going to change it for the sake of changing it. He's bringing back some logic because the job was created for the former premier. And I can understand why. I can see why. Because who wants to be, you know, Margaret Thatcher to John Major? Do you know what I mean?
Let's look at the timeline.
It was awkward.
Wendy.
And we don't have well, I was going to say we don't have a House of Lords that he could go in, but apparently you can get a title.
Well, he's gotten his QC, he's gotten his knighthood, he's well on his way to something. Yeah, but when you look at the timeline, Wendy, what one or two points really stick out to you about the timeline? I mean, for me,
the letters of request, because that's where you've got to look.
For me, the lack of any sort of activity for some 2 years between September of 2018, basically until November of 2020, nothing really happened much at all. And then all of a sudden we see, especially in late 2021, right around early 2021, around knowing that the election was they were going to be pushing the governor to call the election early in February. All of a sudden you see this immense amount of activity. February. Because
obviously he wanted to make sure that his job was ready for, you know, the day after the election. And at that point it wasn't ready. But what's interesting is that the governor is British. Yes. And in the UK system, there is this policy, this rule that you do not do this stuff. So he knows, and he knows the reasons why. So even though we don't actually have it as a formal written down policy, the governor is well aware of why you don't do it. He's a civil servant in the UK, remember. He's not, we might look at him here as a big leader, but he's not. He's a civil servant. He's you know, in the UK, he's a diplomat. He has a job. So he knows what the civil service is supposed to do in this, what you call the lame duck period, if you like. But he issued
signed off on it.
The letters of request for the two offices in Brussels and Washington the day after the election had been brought forward. So the election campaign at that point was only, I don't know what's between Feb 11th or Feb 10th and April 14th or whatever. How many weeks was that? It was like, you know, 8 weeks or something. Yeah, so it was like a tiny period. So for him to send those letters out without going to the Premier's office and saying, dear, you know, in a memo, dear, you know, an email, dear Alden, do you not think we should put this on hold until after the election? He didn't do it. He still made the request. Now, as it goes, none of the requests came through until much later, until after the election itself. So the requests came through for offices that this government doesn't really want.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on.
That's the thing is that the governor would also have known that these requests were not going to come through before the election was over.
Yes. So we have some questions. Carlos seems confused as usual. He says, why is the current government lying to say that they have to earmark $6 million for 6 contracts rolled out by the PPM before the election? The PPM probably has the money to facilitate the contracts, and PAC should not be leaking their business. How do you address someone like that who's obviously confused? And he goes on to say, love or hate them, the PPM has the right to keep their earnings secret in order to prevent political badgering. I'm not really sure what Carlos is even talking about. We're not talking about earnings here. We're talking about them.
I don't think he understands it's public money. Yeah, it's public.
Yeah, this is public money. This isn't private earnings. Like Carlos, you either keep up on this program or you come off of the live stream or you're going to be blocked, because the nonsense that you're saying makes absolutely no sense at all. Get it together now. Jared has a question, but Jared, let's see what Siobhan says. Siobhan says, what the crock or crap are you talking about? Nonsense. I'm pretty sure she's referring to Carlos. Nona says, is anybody else going to jail besides the person who leaked the report? Eden says, advocacy groups and citizens were wondering why all this was happening in early 2021 and how it could all be happening with Parliament suspended. Well, I guess
that's Eden's spot on there, and that's what this report should end up being about, which is creating that, confirming a policy that says from the moment an election is called to election day, that period, no new policies, no new contracts, no new spending.
Yeah. Magdalene says, so it brings the governor's actions into question also.
Certainly does.
Yes. That's what Wendy said. She wasn't mincing her words. Then election fever took over and the country gets distracted as usual, Eden. And that's why some of us were out there protesting to ensure that previous government could not get back in. Yes, Cindy, we don't mince our words here in the Cold Hard Truth. Jared, you have a question?
Yes, I think this is one situation leading to another bigger series of sub-factors. It would bring into question the governor's role, because he sits in the cabinet. He's the chairman of the cabinet. So at the end of the day, whoever the chief officers that would have seen, and I'm more than likely sure the chief officers would have seen the entrustments happening, it would bring them into question, and by extension the deputy governor, because they all know what goes on here, as Wendy not alluded to. She said emphatically. What I will say, Miss Sandy, is that we have to look at the bigger picture. Cayman needs money. The only way, and I know I have to interject it here, the only way we get money is to people coming to Cayman, tourism and things of that nature.
That's not the only way, but okay.
I do agree with I somehow disagree with Wendy's statements to say that, okay, why do we need international trade and whatever?
That's not what Wendy said.
Okay, well, she was saying what was the
ministry. Mm-hmm. And Wendy, I'll let you obviously address this, but her question wasn't why we need international trade.
I was pointing out that we don't have international trade in the same way that another
and the whole point. So I'm a business practitioner. Just because
it's part of the financial services sector is what I'm saying is the financial service, the offshore, the financial services ministry is what covers all of this stuff. The idea that the former premier carved a big chunk of it out. So I mean, literally, we would. Describing it as the gadding about ministry, because that's what it was. I mean, the ministry for gadding about was a joke, because we all recognize what was happening and why it was being done, because there was no logical policy reason. All of our international trade, if you like you say, as you say, the only way we get money is for money to come in from overseas. So it either comes in from tourists or it comes in from the financial services sector. We don't sell oil. We don't sell coal. We don't sell bauxite. We don't even sell very much rum cakes. So that's our international trade, is rum cakes or whatever. So the most of our international trade is financial services. So what were you doing carving out chunks of it and making a new made up ministry? Because after being premier, I need a job that's more prestigious. I can't just be the dump minister or, the health minister. I need to be something special.
Yeah,
and I'm creating myself
and rub shoulders with
I'm not going to refute that, but I have to say, based on what I know we have Caymanians overseas globally, right? And so the Cayman Islands government office in the UK isn't necessarily going to suffice for locals in North America, Asia, because we have Caymanians overseas. I have to take it from that standpoint.
That's not what this was creating. With all due respect,
no,
Jared.
but with the creations of the offices, which are in certain regions, which have a certain density.
All right, let's look at the report. Maybe we need to delve a little bit more into the report. Jared, we're going to pull you out for a second. A few people saying Jared isn't quite ready for this conversation. This is really a big boys conversation.
That's unfair. He's very ready.
No, I think no. I mean, and that's why I love to give Jared a voice, because he's asking questions, and if he doesn't understand something, like anybody else,
he's making a good point. He was making a good point. We already have representatives overseas, whether it's in government or
but he's making the point to say, why not expand that? And that's contrary.
Oh yeah, maybe if that's a policy. Nobody's saying that that's not an impossible policy. The question is, why would you carve out a ministry? You've already got an existing ministry. You've already got a ministry that deals with these things. We've already got a London office. Like, why are you? We know it's not a mystery. We know what went on. It went on before our very eyes, even before this report came out. The former premier was creating a niche job for himself.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Let's delve into the report a little bit. So we looked at the timeline. Quite interesting. Now we get to her objectives. And I said at the onset that she really does not, she being the Auditor General, she does not mince her words in any way, shape, or form. So at point number 10, objective number 1, did breaches to the PSMA and by extension section 55(1)(d) of the Cayman Islands Constitution occur in the conduct of activities related to this project? She says yes. Full stop.
It's a fact-based report. She's done finding of facts, and that's all she's done.
Yeah.
If you look at the report, she doesn't do in her special report, she often does a little bit of analysis as to why things might have occurred and what could have stopped it. But here in this report, she simply points out the facts.
So Carlos says that this is an attempt to discredit the last government. This isn't an attempt to discredit the last government. This is showing what the last government actually did, Carlos. And the Auditor General is an impartial office.
It's a fact-based report. It's a fact-based report. There's nothing in it. She doesn't go anywhere near. She doesn't go anywhere near her usual sort of, hey, look at this, boys and girls. It's like really bad. They shouldn't do this. She does none of that. All she does is at the end, she points out that the result of all of this can be addressed by introducing this policy. That's all she does. Just one thing at the end where she says, I think we need to introduce these policies, and then this wouldn't happen again. But the idea that she's done anything other than fact, I thought it was, like you say, there was no mincing words, and it was just straightforward.
Yeah.
It's just a straightforward
So she goes on to say, number 10, that yes, they have actually breached the law and the Constitution. She clarifies about subsection 55(1)(d), which speaks to the governor being responsible for all personnel management activities. So let's talk about this for a second. She says, I have concluded that breaches did occur. There was no and at least insufficient existing budget provision at the time that staff contracts with both projects were entered into. And so breach of section 73. Let's deal with the section 51(d). Basically, where they were getting involved in the hiring, promotion of civil servants, which should never be done.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is that that the minister was getting involved in the recruitment.
Well, who
I'm not sure she establishes that actually.
Who got the contract signed?
No, it was the civil servants that were carrying on doing the recruiting, and it is the civil servants that do it.
So how is section 55(1)(d) breached?
Well, that's the thing, is that we need to see a bit more about this, because the breach, how much political interference was there in the selection? But more importantly, were the civil servants being directed to do certain things that they wouldn't normally do? Mm-hmm. Or were the civil servants doing things off their own bat to select the people that they wanted or that they felt were the right people? because there is some suggestion that although all of the people that were selected were all Caymanians, because these jobs had to be given to Caymanians, given the front-facing role. The Caymanians, some of the Caymanians that were given the jobs weren't necessarily the most qualified Caymanians.
Definitely not.
So
we saw an HR
there were different
manager
there are
who
different
has
reasons.
no experience in international affairs, has never lived anywhere else in the world or anything.
She's the girl that got picked for
no
Asia,
diplomacy, no nothing training, and yet she was headed to, I think, the Asia office or something.
Yeah, she was the Asia office. Yeah,
how does that happen?
But then the other on the other side. So the thing is, what was there? I think the internal inquiry is going to be focused on the civil servants' decisions over who was recruited and how. If you get me. That's what and I think that's what that.
Yeah.
That's
so I see where really the section 55(1)(d) breach is more focused on the breach of section 7(1) of the PSMA as it relates to the actual financial provision, as opposed to political interference in the hiring process.
Yeah, I think it's more to do with how, the process, like, was the money in place? Why were you doing it? What was it based on? Where was the criteria? Where was the GEMS assessment of the jobs? Where's the business? All of those things, I think that's what's in question about what the civil servants were doing. And also there is an element of this was evidently being directed in the backroom by politicians, but there's no, you can only say that based on the circumstantial evidence of this report, that it was very likely, but that's not written down, and it's not going to be written down. If a minister calls up a senior civil servant, his chief officer, and says, by the way, I know a great girl for that job.
There'd be no record of that.
No. Yeah. But then, when that girl applies for the job and she gets recruited, the minister gets what he wants, but on paper it looks like it's all been done properly. It's very, very difficult. I mean, these are very difficult paths to plow, because the problem is often when people get the job and they deserve the job and it's the right job because they've been anointed or pointed out by, it undermines, and so it works both ways. So you have to be very careful. I think these are minefields of problems. And how they're resolved is that you have policies in place, as she's always trying to point out. You have management practices and policies in place that act as guide rails so that people stay within these, and it's not. It becomes very, very difficult for them. You control the pen, as it were. But in this one, I consider some of the problems more because for us, from a public point of view, it's about the money. And this constant voting of money. Why is it an exceptional circumstance to open an office in Washington or Hong Kong? How could it possibly, in the middle of a pandemic, be an exceptional circumstance to vote money for that? How?
Yeah. Let's read more of what she says. So at point number 11, she says, I have concluded that breaches did occur. There were no, at least insufficient, existing budget provision at the time staff contracts for both projects were entered into. So a breach of section 7(3) of the PSMA, and by extension, section 55(1)(d) of the Constitution occurred. She goes on to talk about the overseas offices first. So the funding of $2.5 million for the overseas offices on the 12th of January, 2021. This funding was approved, she says, through two different sections of the law. $500,000 came from section 11(5) of the PMFA, and then the remaining $2 million for the later 9 months for 2021 was agreed by cabinet under section 12(2) of the PMFA. And she said section 12 approvals are subject to approval of the Finance Committee of Parliament before any expenditure can be incurred. Did that happen?
Nope.
Wow. She goes on at point number 13. Interpretation supported by specific legal advice. So she does make an interpretation here, but she sought legal advice on it. Is that the $500,000, so the $500,000 for the first 3 months approved under section 11(5), does not meet the definition of an exceptional circumstance. I know Jared was saying earlier that he thought that it could meet it. She says, in her opinion, and she's gotten it supported by legal advice, it doesn't.
I think common sense it doesn't. It's common sense it doesn't. How could it possibly be exceptional? Where's the emergency? Where's the problem?
Well,
where's the major
because
issue?
we were blacklisted, that might have been.
But you see, this is the PPA throwing smoke and mirrors. The blacklisting is nothing to do with the offices or the office in Brussels. The blacklisting is as a result of the Financial Action Task Force blacklisting. That happened already way back in previously. And that's all to do with the fact that we hadn't addressed and that's the Attorney General's department, they hadn't addressed the issues relating to money laundering. Would you ever prosecute anybody? That's the bottom line on that one. So it's nothing to do with the offices and promotion and being, eating canopies with foreign dignitaries. That is not why we're grey-listed. We're grey-listed because we don't have the proper laws in place and we don't use the laws we have to prosecute people who are laundering money. That's it. And the EU is only blacklisting us because the Financial Action Task Force has already blacklisted us. We will not come off the EU grey list until we come off the FAFTA list. And we can open 1,000 bloody offices. Won't change a thing. So no exceptional circumstance. The grey listing happened for entirely unrelated reasons to the European Union and our relationship with them. Sorry.
All right, let's move on. So at point 14, I also conclude that the government breached section 12.2 of the PMFA, as the government requires parliamentary approval via finance committee prior to any expenditure being incurred. Simple, pretty simple. So we had
pretty simple. You didn't ask
the
elected people who for the money. The entire parliament has a role in distributing the money. I mean, there's not much they can do. The opposition can do. They can either say we agree or we don't agree, but they, whether they disagree or not. But at least it gives the chance for them. You see, a lot of this could have been said if this money had been brought to the House and there would have been a debate about it. All of these issues that you and I are talking about now would have been raised by people like Ezra Miller. It would have got aired in the public and there would have been question marks raised.
It's a level of transparency that just didn't happen because they didn't follow the correct process. And she goes on at 14 to say that I also conclude that the government breached section 12.2. I was saying that, but then 3 were appointed on a 5-year contract.
Yeah, I mean, that's ever such a long time.
Ended contracts.
Yeah, I mean, it's ever such a long time, isn't it? Like even normal contracts in
especially
they're Canadians anyway, so they didn't really
tested. Like, what if you set up an office in Brussels and then you find out, okay, this person isn't a good fit, or maybe that office isn't a perfect office?
We're not actually. This is a 5-year contract.
It seems very peculiar that you wouldn't do a 1-year contract, then renewable, based on change in circumstances or whatever. Yeah. So anyway, she goes on to say that these appointments were made and contracts signed before the parliament had approved the $2 million funding for the remainder of 2021. So they were putting the cart before the horse.
Oh, well and truly.
Wow.
Well, it all comes back to the same point. It comes back to the same point over and over again. This was all about a job for a specific person. And at the end of the day,
so he was willing to let me understand what your opinion is here, Wendy.
That's my feeling.
Being the former Premier Alden McLaughlin was willing to set up an entirely new ministry, hire unnecessary people to the tune of over $5 million, placing them all over the world in different offices to create a job opportunity for himself.
Right. Okay. The unnecessary part, let's say he would argue that it was necessary. He would argue that in the long run, it would keep us off blacklists. It would. And, and you know what? He proved himself when he was a premier as a great potential diplomat. He was very good at it. Who else would have gone on Crosstalk or whatever it was called? Not Crosstalk. That's your show, isn't it? Who's Crosstalk?
The UK show.
The UK Hard Talk. Very good BBC. Things like that. And he performed brilliantly. And and when he goes overseas and he's, hanging out with more, I don't know, princes and in satellite states of France.
Prince Albert and the like.
And all that. He's great. So he is, let's put it this way. If we needed an ambassador, I couldn't think of a better person than Alden McLaughlin.
Yeah.
However, do we need one? And now he would argue that we did. And had he come into office and taken it, he might have made an absolute brilliant ambassador. And he might have all gone very well. But the point is, there was a lot of questions surrounding the logic of it, the funding of it, the business case for it, especially given the circumstances that we were in. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Gadding about the world was not really on the cards at that point. So it wasn't the right time or the right circumstances for this particular job to have been created. And I think he would argue that had he won the election and, taken it up, he would have done it and there would have been justification. Although it may have ended up that in actual fact it wouldn't, because, the way that the world has turned, it might not have worked out well at all. But that's the main point, is that's what we're left with, is that a job was created for an outgoing premier to create something special for him, while at the same time the country was going through a lot of other things. And it's nearly $6 million that this administration is now committed to spending, when it's very clear that they have a different approach and their hands are a little bit tied. So what they're going to have to do is, within the approach that they wanted to take, they're going to have to try and make what the PPM left them fit. And that's going to be very difficult. And it's difficult for the people, because at the end of the day, there's at least 5 people. It's not so much the 6th guy, Ali, because the expo is almost over anyway. So his was a temporary contract. So that ends next month. So that's money gone and nothing can be done about that. But the 5 other people.
I want to talk about that here. I want to talk about that here in a second, but go ahead and finish.
Well, I was going to say, because it's getting on for 20 to 10. I can't stay for much longer. I've got more stories to write. I've got to write installment 2 of this morning. I haven't finished it yet.
So listen, Wendy, point number 15, that the letter of entrustment for the Washington office, this is quite interesting, was subject to the condition that the U.S. government must first grant permission to set up the office in the USA. Yeah. And they did the appointment and relocation of the representative to the USA without any certainty.
Months before they'd ever
so they didn't even have approval from the U.S. to be able to do it, and they went ahead and did it anyway.
Yep.
So let me just talk about this for a second, because I have a little bit of inside information with this young man. So that would be Chris Duggan.
Yeah, Chris is yeah. That was announced when the RCIPS announced that he wouldn't be Special Constable Boss anymore. So
yeah, we saw that story come out quite interesting.
Yeah, but he's now in limbo. I mean, it's like,
No, but let me tell you something about him. Because, we saw that story come out last week to say, he's off to Washington and, he's given up his position here with the police constable and whatever. But here's what I know as a matter of fact. And this shows you how operating in this way is such a incredibly dangerous practice. So Chris had actually quit his job, sold his house.
Yes.
And had either left or was in the process of leaving.
Yeah, I think some of his family have already gone.
All of this stuff was done in anticipation of this government being able to fulfill these contracts. And I heard that when they did not get back in, the first thing that people like Melinda and others wanted to do was sue the current government for breach of contract.
Well, I think
I'm just telling you what's on the Mall Road, folks.
Yeah, I mean, well, the only thing is that I understand that they are continuing to pay them. Everybody's getting paid,
even though they're not in the position.
Yep. Because at the moment, the government doesn't know. The government is trying to avoid potential legal exposure. Yeah, and litigation. So they're working out a way to deal with it all, because it may be that they can find them jobs, and they can find, once decisions have been finalized about how this administration is going to handle the overseas issues.
Wow.
It may be. So, for example, the person that's got the Brussels job, she may very well end up doing that job, but from London. So I'm not saying that I have any specific insight on this.
Yeah.
But just I'm just speculating on based on the logic and what I.
A little bit of an insight that I'm going to share with you now.
Yeah.
My sources at Well Place have said the following in relation to, I think, Brussels specifically. So They said the USA and Brussels offices are proceeding, but with one representative as opposed to one rep and a deputy rep, therefore reducing costs. So, I mean,
well, that's what I understand. That's what I understand is going to happen regarding Washington. Brussels, not so much. Brussels may not go ahead at all.
Yeah,
there's no certainty because
my sources are saying that what's gonna happen with those two. So we'll have to wait and see. But
yeah, I mean, the thing is,
you know what, Expo situation in Dubai.
Yeah.
So break this down for us a little bit. This is very interesting.
I don't know what to say about that. Where you at? Are you still there?
Sorry, Wendy.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I couldn't hear you for a minute.
Okay. So I was saying that in relation to the World Expo in Dubai, if you could break that one down for us a little bit.
No, there's not much to say about that one. I mean, I think, you know, it was we're going to do this with it was all part of that, you know, again, the Premier got sucked into that ridiculous promotion of Boris Johnson's, which was, you know, Global Britain, you know, that was their political issue in trying to convince people that Brexit was such a splendid idea after all. And it was just foolish to get sucked into that. And you know, the trade expos and all that malarkey. So anyway, they got sucked into that, got pulled into, and then obviously you have to have somebody there, and why not Ali? I mean, admittedly, it's a little problematic in that his wife works there, but hey, you know, it is what it is. To be honest with you, that one doesn't kind of ring as bad, to be honest, as the rest of it. I think it's just one of those things. I think for whatever reason, they were sucked into believing that that was a good idea to go, you know, to go there because Britain, you know, the UK were doing it and pretending to be, you know, that's the UK government's problem of like, how do we become relevant because we're not anymore and no one really cares. So we'll do stupid things in global Britain. Come on. You just left the biggest trading bloc in the world and you're now trying to pretend you can be relevant by trading with Australia. I mean, and we got sucked into that.
Well, it's a very, very interesting report. I'm still working I got to page, I think, 10 or 11. So I am still working my way through it. They had an event manager for the Dubai Expo. They've broken down the cost here. The partnership cost is $600,000.
Yeah, it was an awful lot of money. It was a waste of money. I mean, like that's, you know, but, you know, the UK just wrote off $9 billion or £9 billion even yesterday for PPE equipment that they bought that was no good. Governments waste money. So it's not. So that was a waste of money. Yes. I think there's less skullduggery around that one. I feel there's less skullduggery. I just feel that was just stupidness. It was part of the window dressing though as well of like, oh, you know, this idea that Alden was promoting, which was that, you know, the Cayman Islands is going to be on the world stage and we're going to be important. I think he needed to also stir that pot to make people feel excited about it and to make him think, to make us believe that what he was going to do was so relevant and so important. I think it was part of that issue, you know. But I mean, there's nothing that can be done about that one now because that's all over.
Yeah,
the money's wasted.
And just an aside quickly about sort of these agreements that are put in place by a previous government that did not follow the law, now being potentially a binding commitment on the new government. When this government got in, remember how they had to allocate sort of emergency funding or interim funding to pay for this new ministry, which included the salary increases that the previous government had done from the same January before. Right. And people are up in arms going on and on about why is the government giving themselves a pay increase? Why do you think people are not able to connect the dots on how that was actually a progressive's decision, just like the progressives gave themselves a severance package for politicians, which has never existed before?
Yeah, I mean, you know.
Why is it hard for people to understand that this government has
it's not hard for them to understand, Sandra. It's about the polarization that's going on in every single country in the world. And it's like people are now just chanting from, you know, what team they're on anymore. It's like their belief systems are completely controlled by what team they're on. So if they're PPM's team, then it's going to be PAC's fault. If they're PAC team, it's going to be PPM's fault. People have lost the ability to navigate between the space in between, you know, which is really important. And I think, you know, it's our role as a press to try and help people navigate because let me tell you, you know, as much as I have huge hope for climate sustainability and development with the arrival of Wayne as Premier, Wayne Panton as Premier. Huge hope. But I am not stupid. I already see with my own eyes the difficulties that he's navigating. And in about 10 minutes, when the Central Planning Authority gets together this morning, I am sure they're going to get that big old rubber stamp out and once again go fly in the face of his policies. So governments are not perfect. This government is not perfect. I'm hoping that they're going to do a better job in terms of the people and what the people need than perhaps the last administration, which I think very much lost sight of the people. I'm not saying that they weren't all incompetent, they weren't all terrible, and there was some pretty good policy, but unfortunately they did get, sucked into the big business and the money from the big guys and forgot about the people who are having a hard time. It's all well and good. Trickle down economics is awful, So, and I was really pleased to see that this government was going to move away from that. And I think they're trying. But when you have a government that is not made up of people that share the same agenda or policies, how do you do that? And we can see it's not working out. We have a planning minister and an environment minister who were facing each other in the court on the same cabinet, for God's sake. If that doesn't tell you that there's trouble, I don't know what does.
Oh boy. All right.
So, no one's perfect, but I think one message that always comes from, because you saw the statement yesterday from the governor of the DG. As always, they're much more concerned about the leak. Don't be worried about the leak. There's no police investigation here. There's no sub judice. All you've got to decide is which civil servants are going to get a golden handshake, or a golden parachute, or which civil servants are going to be dismissed in disgrace, or which ones are just going to get moved into another job. That's all they're dealing with.
Let me to that very point. I mean, Eric Bush's name keeps coming up in relation to this and to other things. Now, allegedly, there's some sort of I don't know if investigation is the correct term, about Mr. Bush and other things that have fell under his remit. And you have anything that you're going to be breaking on that anytime soon?
Depends. You know me, Sandra. I don't like to publish unless I feel very, very confident about what I've got and where it's come from.
Well, and if a Section 55 matter is what I've been told.
Both, yes. I also want both sides. I don't like to do it.
But something is going on. We can safely say that Mr. Bush, there's some questions being.
Well, I think as they have said in this 3 times now to me, and now in this statement, that there is an internal inquiry going on, and it's a civil service matter, and so there are people that are being investigated, and I would be exceptionally surprised if the chief officer in this ministry isn't part of that. Let's put it this way. So what will happen at the end of the day? I mean, we have a terrible, terrible legacy of civil servants who reach the top of the mountain and it gets politicized. This is one thing that we've got a problem with, and it's good to see the Premier put Pilar in the position that he's put her in as a political appointment.
Yes, exactly.
Because there is a lot to be said for the top layer of all ministries to have a political appointee who can take on that role, because Eric Bush was politicized. And so now we have a situation. He's doing the bidding of his minister, as he's supposed to do under the Public Management and Services Act. But it's very difficult, because you start stepping into, as soon as that, like he was doing all of that job in that space, that's really questionable, because he was continuing to pursue the policy of his minister when he no longer had a minister.
Amazing. Wendy Ledger from Cayman News Service, folks, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Sandra. It's great to be on your show. And I'm sorry I don't come on more
on the
often.
morning show. You're always welcome to come on.
You know, it's my writing time. It's my quiet writing time from sort of 7 till 10:30.
Yeah.
So that's my quiet writing time. So usually,
it's your time to make noise on behalf of the people. But we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and joining us. And we'll do another media roundtable soon with Kevin. He'll be reaching out.
The evening ones are good. They're better for me. So
yeah,
thank you once again, Sandra, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Alrighty, bye. All right, folks, that was Wendy Ledger again. She was the lead on this story, so we like to give credit where credit is due. Came on news service, and like she said, maybe the focus should not be on wondering who the leak was and spending God knows how much money trying to figure out who leaked this document, but look at the document itself and try to address some of these very, very shocking, conclusions that were made in the Auditor General's report. So we've run out of time. We're not done with the report yet. So tune back in tomorrow morning. We'll definitely revisit and go into a little bit more detail about some of the findings, including the World Expo, which we haven't gotten an opportunity to do as yet in terms of the report, folks. But let's go back to some of your comments. Carlos, I don't know what's going on with you, but Melanie says, governments all over seem to be spending more time trying to plug holes and covering up mistakes with investigations, whereas the time would be better spent addressing the content of the issues. Thankful that we have bold civic people willing to do the right thing. Thank you, Mel. Linda says civil servants also get involved in marketing and actively promoting the port project, which is not neutral, in my opinion, and should also be investigated. Johan is here for it. He says, after this interview between Sandra plus Wendy Ledger, watch for the RCIP's roll-up and confiscate all their computers, cell phones, and raid their homes for breaking down the AG's report where the facts were stated. What a hot mess. I don't know what Carlos is talking about. Obviously, don't get it. I was constant. Oh, so Carlos was referring to that comment, thinking that Johan was being serious and that should happen. Okay, Carlos. Johan clarifies that it's called sarcasm, and you should look up the definition. Carlos, one thing we do not allow here on the program, despite your obvious disconnection with reality, is threats against anyone. And that comment right there, I'm not even going to read it, is a threat against Johan. So guess what? Now you get the pleasure of being blocked. What is wrong with you? Just behave yourself. Why are you threatening people? You're entitled to your stupid opinion, but you're not entitled to your stupid opinion then leading you to want to threaten people. You can't do that. Okay, so you get blocked. Moya says, based on the report, yes, they overstepped and disregarded government policies regularly. How many of the decisions made in the past 8 years benefited us, the middle and low income Caymanians? Has life for us gotten better or harder? I think we all know the question. Yes, Johan, someone's not playing with a full deck. We're going to sort that out here shortly. Embrace the facts and the truth. We don't have to agree with it, but it still remains a fact, says Moya. Yeah, this is a fact-finding document, folks. Wherever you stand politically, you cannot read this document and understand what it is saying and not understand the clear breaches of the Constitution and the law that were made by the progressive government. I don't care if you're the progressive government's #1 fan. Good for you. That's not what this is about. Had the Pat government done the same thing, I would expect the exact same report and the same degree of dialogue about it. We have to hold governments accountable, folks, regardless of who they are. Eden, thank you, Sandra, by the way, for your comment. She says, who feels it knows it. She says, I was cut off because listening to this and all right and true. Thanks, CMR. Eden says, Linda, this should open a Pandora's box of public inquiry. And yet, yeah, El Rey, this is the thing. I'm confused about this, and I'm going to seek some clarification from the powers that be. What do you mean they're still getting paid? But you see, this is the problem. This is what I told y'all in when the government got in. When were they sworn in April or whatever, right? This is the issue. The previous government has bound them. The increases in salary wasn't just for them. It was for this new ministry. A large portion of it was for this new ministry. They can't just go in and say that they're going to undo all of that without some legal ramifications. And they'll spend more money getting sued than just paying people their contracted amount until they can then figure out how to ease up out of the situation. But y'all up in arms, oh, they're taking a pay raise. And I'm like, look at the entirety of what the Progressives government did in January of 2021. What budget? But see, they were so gung-ho on getting reelected, they didn't put all the funding in place. So there was an interim. That's why the second the PAC government got in, they had to run in and say, okay, how are we going to continue to pay people? How are we going to continue to fund this department, et cetera? I would love to hear from the new minister for this, which is Mr. Andre Ebanks. I would love to hear his position on this. Andre Ebanks, like any other representative, you have an open invitation to come on the program. Because the PAC government does not share, it is obvious, as Wendy said, that they do not share the same opinion about the creation of these foreign offices. And some of them they may have to do because Chris Dugan already packed up his family, quit his job, sold his house. So you try to cancel that contract now and see what kind of money, not to mention the reputational damage now that you're going to do to this man, see what's going to happen. So other people have been able to be eased back into other positions. So Miss Julie, she was supposed to be going, I don't know what office she was going. I can't remember now, Julie Campbell. I don't know what office, I can't remember off the top of my head what office she was going to, but they put her back into deputy director position at NRA. So this is probably, El Rey, what's happening is they're having to put them back in positions, but at a similar salary to what they're being promised in the overseas office. And some of these people are still sitting down thinking that this is going to happen with the overseas office. Y'all don't even know the half of it. The Attorney General, oh, child, poor him, poor Sam. He can't do much. Again, who's leading the charge here? It's the political arm telling the Attorney General what he must do. And then he normally has to be the one to clean it up legally. Laura, good morning. She says, thank you, Sandra and Wendy, for speaking out and informing the public. What you're doing is invaluable and greatly appreciated. Here's Carlos again. You'll soon get the block button. Eden talks about those 10-story buildings. Natasha says it's a regular thing with government, commit an offense, but remain on paid leave for infinity. I mean, here's the thing about it is the people who, were breaching the laws, most likely, as Wendy said, were doing so on the advice of the political arm. Oh, poor Carlos. You're going from bad to worse. All right. You're blocked. You're done. How are we going to block you for standing up for yourself? Poor you. Junior, there's no talking to Carlos. He's not playing with a full deck. Code of conduct still not established. Don't make a year pass. It would be like sex offender registry. Now, the premiere is on this evening, folks. Make sure you tune in from 7 to 9 o'clock. He has last time said that we are getting ever so closer to this code of conduct. Hopefully that will be one of the initial things that Premier Pilar Bush will be helping him with. So someone says Chris Dugan is partly at fault. He should have verified the authority. But who does that? If you're a civil servant, if someone comes to you and say, hey, we have this job available, you're the successful candidate, you're going to get the job. How do you ask them, oh, well, is this in contravention of the Constitution? Like, you think that they know what they're doing. Nobody does that. Nobody gets hired as a civil servant. And you say, well, did you advertise the job correctly? Did you ensure that it's not in the contract? Nobody does that. Nobody does that. You cannot put this on Chris Dugan. I don't know Chris Dugan from the man on the moon, but I cannot agree with that sentiment that he has any responsibility to bear here. Political shenanigans went on, in my honest opinion. But what do they're like, hey, the government allocated the budget. They don't know how to tell the government. whether they, did this or not. Yes, child, somebody just WhatsApping me about Carlos. He's blocked already. Don't worry about him. He's an idiot. Rachel, Natasha, great show. Thank you so much. Eden says exactly. Chris et al. Aren't at fault here. If it avoids paying lawyers and courts, is probably the best spend. Unfortunately, that I think will be the fallout. So we do have another submission here. Let me see if I can pull it up as an image. Give me 1 second. So this was actually a comment on CNS, and this commenter had the following to say. It's a little bit small, so bear with me while I read this out. But this person, res ipsa locator, is the name of the commenter, and if you are someone who's ever been to law school, you know what that is. It's a legal term that basically translated is the thing speaks for itself. And it goes on to say the actions of Eric Bush represent gross misconduct where several laws were breached. The significant breaches include the willful and deliberate breach of Section 55 of the Constitution and Section 7.3 of the Public Management Law, as well as Section 12.2 of the Public Management and Finance Law. These were made after the ministry recruited staff and signed 5-year and open-ended contracts with 5 senior staff for the overseas office in breach of the relevant laws. That level of incompetence, abuse of power, and public malfeasance, yes, sir, cannot be rewarded with a nice package for a friend of the deputy governor. Ooh, I felt the jab on that one. This is a significant issue and speaks to a chief officer making the rules as they saw fit with the instructions and consent of elected and senior management of the civil service. Potentially criminal acts occurred during this period, highlighted by the Auditor General's report. This cannot be swept under the rug. There must be consequences that are serious and do not include an exit package for this unlawful action that is causing national scandal, and wasting public funds. This matter should now be formally investigated by the Anti-Corruption Unit for abuse of office by the public officer, Mr. Eric Bush. Wow. You know what tends to happen when high-ranking civil servants screw up, though? They get a pass, honey child. They get to either get promoted into a new job, they get to make a lateral move and disappear quietly. Some of them in the past, when they screwed up, quite ironically, were pushed overseas into, drum roll, an overseas position. I'm telling y'all what I know. This is how the civil service acts when it does not know what to do with people who are, we've seen it before. Remember? Doctoring of an education report. Poor Miss Mary Rodriguez. Where is she, by the way? She got a nice cushy job running some celebration, centennial celebration or some foolishness. Here's another comment about that came in on WhatsApp. It says, there you go. Oh, sorry. They need to go. Eric Bush need to be carted off to prison without a friggin' trial. Oh, Lord, we can't do that now. Wait until they hear about the mansion in France. Whose mansion? Who is a mansion? Well, they should have to give them two political appointed jobs now. Oh my God, what a hot mess. Y'all full of some tea this morning. Another commenter on WhatsApp says, FYI, Chris is best friends with Eric and Joey. What? His wife is Dee Dugan, one of the U.S. consulates here at one point. Wow. Y'all bringing out some tea. I'm not here to confirm or deny any of that, but those are the comments from our listeners. And y'all got to throw everybody under the bus talking about senior HR managers at different institutions. Someone is saying now they need to investigate the governor. What a hot mess. I don't know what to say except that I've got to go. to court this morning because I'm watching very, very carefully a child molester. I think the jury will go out today. They're going to get instructions this morning, and they'll be sent out to make their decision. And I pray to the good Lord that they make the right decision. After the decision, the verdict is rendered. We can talk about it a little bit. It does involve a child. So, of course, there's some things that I cannot say. But I refuse. Listen to me very, very carefully. There's still over 200 of you tuned in. I refuse to be silenced on the protection of our children in this community. Right? Because the court says, well, don't name the child. Nobody's going to name the child. So I'm not going to give away any information that will let you know who the child is. But the perpetrators have to be named. We have to find a way to name these individuals. Because some of them will leave this jurisdiction and be deported. And they'll be in other jurisdictions doing the same thing to poor children, molesting children. So you all need to be aware. They will not pass the sex offenders registry. That's not going to stop us from naming them and hopefully shaming them. And y'all have got to be aware of who these people are. They present a real danger to people in the community. And I got to tell you something. Like I said, I don't want to say a whole lot about it because the jury is going out today. But this guy actually had the audacity one day last week coming out of court. It might have been Friday, as I was passing him to actually mumble some words to me like hello or something. I was like, honey child. In my head, I was having a very serious conversation, and this is how the conversation went. The conversation said, Sandy, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. Just keep walking. Because this is a man who, any child molester, but it's particularly this one, what he's being accused of, and I believe he did it, he should have absolutely nothing to say to me. Never. Walking on the street, walking in court, I'm not the person that you speak to. Because I'm sitting there in court looking at you thinking, boy, I feel like I could just, if I knew a good kung fu move, it'd be like that hidden tiger, crouching dragon, or whatever the heck it was called. I would kung fu kick you right in the head for what you've done to some poor child. You are horrible. You're the lowest of the lowest. Scum. Anyway, I don't want to say anything more about it. Maybe tomorrow we might have a verdict. I'll let y'all know. Disgusting. So Eden says the focus should be the people at the top of the ladder. Otherwise, it'll be the same as UDP, PPM. Yeah, clear and present danger. So folks, we hope that we have enlightened you this morning, even a little bit, into some of the shenanigans that was happening. And again, it's so funny because we know that these people are being directed by the political arm, but yet there will be no repercussions for the political arm. It's going to be the civil servants. So y'all are calling for an investigation into Eric Bush. Some of y'all saying cart him off to jail, do this to Eric Bush. Who was directing Eric Bush? Why don't we get to that? I'm not saying that there should not be some consequences for Mr. Bush breaching the Constitution, but the real breaches here were happening from the progressive government. Alden McLaughlin, Joey Hugh, Roy McTaggart, every single, what her name is, Barbara Connolly, David White, all of them have to be collectively held responsible. Y'all went to the polls and almost put these people back in. And they didn't care that it was almost, that you didn't actually put them back in. They were going to fight tooth and nail to get back in so they could deliver on something that is now illegal, unconstitutional. You can't get any worse than that when you're talking about breaching the laws of this country. And the people of this country were prepared to do it. You guys still sitting down now. Oh, Alden's the best thing. Educate yourselves. I don't care what government this is. Educate yourselves on what the law says so that you recognize when someone's not in compliance. You can read the Auditor General's report for yourself and you can come to your own conclusions. Whether you like Alden, you could be his best friend. You could be his Domino's partner, his drinking buddy, his girlfriend. It does not matter. What was done under their administration is completely wrong. And it reeks to the high heavens. Right? How many million dollars to be spent? And we'll break it down a little bit further tomorrow. Trust me, we're not done. And then y'all talking about people in this country, $5.3 million, rounded up 5.279, rounded up to 5.3 million. And y'all talking about people in this country can't eat. The cost of living, you can't afford to buy nothing, your children can't afford property anymore, and yet this is what is being permitted? Now y'all know why I was so pissed off at the few who were elected as independent candidates and then tried to reform this government that was doing this kind of stuff. They may not have known, but they also were not listening to the people. They were not listening to their advisors when they were trying to run over there and sign up with Alden and the progressives. Yes, we marched in the streets. I'm so glad that we did. Are you not glad that we did? Enough is enough. People of the Cayman Islands, I beg you to stand up for what is right. Forget about party politics. Forget about your allegiances to someone. I don't care. I was a founding member of the Progressives. I don't care. Support the people that you think are qualified for the job, have the right motives for the job, and will actually do a good job. Stop electing people who are going to rape and pillage this country. Creating a position for yourself, that's your legacy? That's what you want? Oh, having an interstate named after myself, being knighted, getting QC, all these things do not make it any better for you and I. Doesn't matter. I don't care how many knighthoods they want to give out. When I see stuff like this brings me to tears, man. This is disgusting. What's going to be left for, my apologies, I actually have something in my eye, and it's not a tear right now, but what is going to be left for my daughter, for your child, your son, your daughter, your grandchildren? If we're letting the current political machinery rape and pillage this country so that they can get a title, so that they can get a position, that's okay with you? Well, it's not okay with me. I can't just sit back and let it happen. I mean, that's just not right. We give this government a chance, but believe me, we are watching them like a hawk. That's our job. Folks, it's the cold hard truth. I'm not here to curry favors with anybody or to be anybody's friend. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. If you actually care about your governments, you will not sit back and allow them to do anything they want. You're going to be critical of them. You're going to say, hold on a second, that's not right. Explain to me how that's in the best interest of the people of this country. It's not business as usual anymore. The bar has been raised. Eden, thank you very much. Debbie says thanks. Oh, sorry. Yes, Debbie said thanks for the memorable show. Marshall said I should have given him a kangaroo kick. Yeah. Leslie said Sandy, once again, you've done a great service to and for our beloved Cayman Islands. Thank you, Leslie. Eden says, speaking of guilty peeps skating by, whatever happened to the teachers and staff in the school exorcism? All now, we don't know. Let me see if I can find out whatever came of that report. Eden, this is it, right? So much stuff is just swept under the rug. And to be honest, there is so much that oftentimes we forget. It's like, damn, yeah, whatever happened to that? Miss Sue says, thanks for all the informative news. It's an absolute mess, disgrace, and nothing will happen. All will be swept under the carpet. Well, we have to demand that isn't the case. We, the people, will be listened to. Eden Marshall, says, I wasn't there, but I'm glad for those who marched and protested for change. Well, we were marching and protesting for the change that the people voted. And the progressives were still willing to ignore it. And they were willing to do almost anything to get back in power. It was so funny when they were out there lying about how, they'd come to an agreement with now Premier Panton. They hadn't come to an agreement. Roy McTaggart picked up the phone and called him and said, okay, here's how it's going to go down. We'll bring you in the fold, because they thought Wayne was stupid because he used to be a progressive, right? And they used up all his millions foolishly. So they figured, well, once a jackass, maybe always a jackass, we'll take him for another ride around the block. So they said, okay, we'll give you something. We want premiership. Ex-premier is going to get this. So they were willing to take the group that had the majority, try to pull in Wayne Panton with the promise of, we'll take care of you and one or two others that we need. And then everybody else, Chris Saunders, Jay, everybody else gets left to the sidelines. And Wayne was like, so we have the majority. You don't, but still you're negotiating as though you do. Huh. Right. In what world does that happen? And they weren't even going to give Wayne premiership. He was going to be deputy premier or some other foolishness. It was like, who taught Roy McTaggart how to negotiate? That's Alden School of Negotiations right there, boy. Wendy Ledger gives him a lot of credit, saying that he is very diplomatic. Eden, we're going to actually be speaking with Carolina on that and definitely highlighting that in the show. Folks, I want to reveal one more thing to you all before we go here today. Give me 1 second to pull this up. You're going to be tickled pink that I actually have in my possession. What is today now? Today's Wednesday. Let me look at Tuesday's emails. So I do have in my possessions today the logo for the new Bobo FM. Hold on. Let me pull it up. Let me show you. 89.1. This is where we will be on air, simulcasting, starting February. Now, we're in the month of February, so I'm hoping in the next couple weeks, we're going to be ready to rock and roll. And you are going to be the first to see the logo. I didn't design the logo because it's not my radio station, but here we go. Bobo, 89.1 FM. And so appropriately named, Your Voice. I absolutely love it. All about being talk radio is the format of this station. Caymanians, let your voices be heard. This is where it's going to be. 89.1 FM. It's a DMS station, folks. It's not a CMR station, but we will have our show simulcast on the morning show, on the morning slot from 7:30 to 9:30. All right, so I've gone into overtime. Please forgive me for that. I don't really like to go into overtime if I can help it, but some conversations, it is what it is. Big shout out again to Wendy Ledger. Thank you, Wendy, for coming on the program today. I did reach out to her on, I think it was Monday, and we arranged for her to come on. So, we will continue to try to bring you guys the news and the happenings. There's a lot more that was on the agenda today, but I kind of figured that this topic would probably take up most, if not all, of the show. So tomorrow's show, folks, we will go back and delve into the World Expo part of things, wrap that up. And then I want to talk to you about a couple things that have been going on in court and some other things. So Miss Annette, thank you so much. She says, good morning, Miss Sandy. Watch your program every day. Find it very informative. Keep up the good work. I appreciate the love and support. Thank you, Louie. Thank you, Leslie. Jean Scott says, so I want a mug or shirt with CMR and the Bobo logo. We're going to have to arrange that. So appreciate it, folks. And things are happening. Yeah, engineers are coming on island and they're getting all the good stuff done. So, absolutely. By the way, it would be amiss of me to not wish Miss Rena. Okay, let me make sure I get the last name now. Hold on 1 second. Miss Rena. What is her last name now? Hold on. Let me get it. It was her birthday yesterday. Miss Rena Alexander, yes, is 105 years old. She is the oldest living Caymanian, or resident in the Cayman Islands. She is Caymanian, multi-generational. I was able to make it yesterday to her birthday event. Unfortunately, the premier and the governor couldn't be there because of some previous obligations. But wow, she's 105 and still holding a conversation. She still knows a lot of what's going on, and she was singing while they were doing her birthday songs, and she was talking about different things, and just amazing. Just absolutely amazing. I mean, I was like flabbergasted. And she's related to the Solomons from Bodden Town, which means that we could probably be family, because, you know, my dad was a Solomon there from connected to Bodden Town. So my understanding is that her family lived a very, like a lot of them, her siblings and, you know, lineage, all lived a very long life. Like, I think she had, I can't remember if that was her aunt or her sister, lived to be 117. Now, I have never heard that anybody in Cayman lived to be 117. So that was a surprising news to me. But I tell you what, I think that that's amazing. That's beautiful. I'm just trying to see the video from yesterday. I want to share this with you guys. But I'm going to play the video of, I'll end the show on a positive note, the video of them singing to her. Please watch that and enjoy that. And she was singing along and stuff as well. Truly an amazing moment, I think, for our history. And, you know, we have to really appreciate people like her that have worked incredibly hard. They have left behind a legacy that we can all be proud of. And listen, anybody making it to 105 in my book is just absolutely, it's just amazing. You know, I actually knew, and I didn't realize it until I got to her place, who she was. I got the instructions on Sandy, you got to be there. CMR got to be there. And I got instructions on the house location. And when I was driving there, I said, hold on a second. Isn't this Miss Hazel's mom? Because I knew her daughter, Miss Hazel. And sure enough, they were like, yeah, that's who this is. I thought, wow, this is absolutely amazing. I didn't realize she was still alive, to be honest. Miss Rena. Here's a picture of her with some of the people who joined her for the birthday wishes. So there they are. John, Dwayne Seymour was there. Heather was there. Some family members, Miss Mary, the pastor was there, the community pastor. And there she was. And she had a little bit of cake and ice cream and everything. So bless her little heart. I was very, very touched to have been there and be able to, it was a live broadcast. So if you missed it, please go back. And this is just a little snippet of when they were singing some hymns and stuff along with her as well. Now, folks, unfortunately, the premier and others were still in cabinet meeting with the governor, so they were not able to attend. It is my understanding that Chris Saunders did send his present along. He wasn't going to miss out, so he did send her a little birthday present. And the premier really wanted to be there, and he was doing his best to try to get there. But unfortunately, time commitments and so forth did not allow for that. So thank you so much. So thank you to, yes, thank you, Annette Marshall. 105 is amazing. Absolutely. She probably related to the royal family. They seem to live long. Child, I don't know. But she's still looking good for 105, and it is indeed a blessing. Yes, most of us won't reach anywhere near that. But anyway, they know a thing or two about hard work. And so here's some hymns, folks, and some, you know, video footage of the time that was spent with her yesterday. So after this, we'll end the show. You guys have a wonderful show, and we'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Oh, no. This evening, 7 to 9, the premiere is on for Impact, for, what's it called? Sorry. For Premier Access. So let me play that promo first so you don't forget. 7 o'clock tonight.
The Cold Hard Truth now has your Premier access with Premier Panton.
Hello everyone, this is Wayne Panton. Come and join me on Cayman Mar Road's Premier Access every other Wednesday at 7 p.m. for a frank and open Q&A session. I'm here to answer your questions about the issues that concern you the most. Tune in to YouTube and Facebook Live on Wednesday. We will see you there.
Full transparency, answering your questions, down to earth, accountable, and accessible to who matters. You. Don't miss Premier Access on the Cold Hard Truth, spilling the tea like no one else.
Yes. Oh, you might forget the tune sometimes, but yeah.
More bad children. He wasn't bad children.
No. Yes.
Oh yes.
Yes, well.
And that was our parents. That was all. Yes. We did make you like that over people.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yes.
I remember that one.
Yes. Okay. Wow.
You want us to sing again? We can sing happy birthday again. So the preacher's here. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rena. Happy birthday to you. Yay!
Yes.
God is so good.
God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me. He cares for me. He cares for me. He cares for me. He's so good to me. He loves me so. He loves me so. He loves her so. He's so good to me. I'll do his will. I'll do his will. I'll do his will. He's so good to me.
Amen.
Birthday.
Yes.
I said Caroline was the singer. Caroline and Mr. Harold. They were the singers.
Okay.
Or the choir. I just remember them.
Yes.
Especially. Stuart.
Yes.
You remember Miss Irene played the organ?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. And Miss Mead used to teach Sunday school class. Yes. Oh, yeah. And Miss Gabriela sang on the choir too.
That's what they was there. I was the member of the choir. That was that good.
Wow.
You bless
That memory.
Looks upon me as I
I struggle. They say I have nothing, but they are so wrong. In my heart I'm rejoicing. I wish.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.